through the presentations so that we are not disturbing each other. We're recording the session today, or at least we will be recording the session. I'm not sure I quite got that started yet. So we'll share that on the Eventbrite platform, so you'll be able to look back and reach that. Each of our presentations will hopefully end just a little bit before time so that we can take some questions just at the moment. But also at the end of the day at 12 o'clock, we have sort of a plenary question and answer session where all of the presenters will be present to continue to ask questions. Today's agenda, of course, first and foremost, here we are, it's welcome. We have a keynote with Patty Mitchell from 10 to 10:40. We have a session on working with visiting artists and artist residencies. From 10:40 to 11:25, we have adaptive instruction and inclusion. From 11:20 to 12:05, we have demystifying the grant process, a practical guide to grant writing. And then finally, that Q&A session. A reminder, there were several recorded presentations that were made available to you in advance of this call or of this session. So you were able to view those. Those included arts integration, artist residencies, and how to make your arts residency work during COVID-19 instructions with Jennifer Davis and Vicki Murphy. Artist residencies and teaching artists with Shelby Harris, and music therapy in the classroom, helpful approaches to guiding struggling students with Lillian Kay, music therapist from Bowdoin Wallace University. All of those presenters will be on the call with us at 12 o'clock. So if you have questions about those presentations, we will be able to talk with those presenters at that time. Now, we're very excited to turn to our keynote speaker, Patty Mitchell. Patty comes to us from Passion Works Studio in Athens. I'm turning to her bio because it's pretty impressive and I couldn't skip any of it. She is an artist and social entrepreneur specializing in collaborations between artists with and without developmental disabilities. Her dream is to turn sheltered workshops and day programs into creative art-making spaces. Working through the arts process, participants' talents and passions become visible and the core of the program design. Creativity and enthusiasm are the tools for developing a new culture and lifting expectations for what is possible. Collaboratively creating art and inviting community participation offers a vehicle for staff and agencies to move away from institutionalized thinking and develop individualized programming. Sewing, painting, photography, sculpture, giant puppetry, repurposed materials, and innovative approaches manifest as on-site specific public artworks. These spectacular installations leave no doubt as to the individual genius of the artists, encourage conversation, connection, and cultural development for the larger community. Product lines designed through the artwork create employment options and funding streams for continued arts programming. Ms. Mitchell is Executive Director of Passion Works Studio and CEO of Creative Abundance Consulting. She has received a Distinguished Alumna Award from the Ohio University's College of Fine Art at Ohio, an Ohioana Citizen for Arts Education, an Individual Artist Award from the Ohio Arts Council, actually the Governor's Awards for the Arts in Ohio, a Citizen of the Year Award from Civilization, and the Keystone Award from Ohio University for Outstanding Community Service. Patty Mitchell received her BFA and MFA from Ohio University's Fine Art Photography program. I am happy to turn your monitors to Patty for her keynote presentation. Welcome, Patty.
Hey, good morning. Thanks. All right. Woo! Success. So yeah, really happy to be here and talk about connection and collaboration and ways to provide experiences that elevate the spirit and create incredible joy. So basically, I'm going to run through my experience and share the nuggets that have evolved from experience. So I've been an artist in residence since 1992, working with the Ohio Arts Council and independently and as a consultant. And because as artists in residence, I mean, we're basically self-taught. We get to go to university or go to school or do different things and learn techniques. But to be an artist in residence, you're constantly figuring things out. And I love that we can share ideas so we can help each other along and move and guide. So there's some things that I know to be true, and that I believe that making art and experiencing the arts makes life better. And um, and basically that is my obsession, is to have a better life and to create better community and joy and spectacle and bring everyone into the fold. That is just where it's at. So over and over, when I see people making, it is as if we are creating a gift, and that gift is to show you me. Like, here I am, this is me. And then I get to say I see you and experience you. And that is just a beautiful thing that we can do for each other. And the simplicity and the, I don't know, I just can't ever get over it, how much joy there is in sharing what we make with each other. So a lot of the residencies that I've done, you know, are one-on-one to create these experiences as this connective point. Like, here we are, this little bundle of joy together, this intimate experience of seeing ourselves and sharing what we do and who we are. And then to say, how can we together create this explosion of our imaginations and see each other as a group, individually within the group, but together. And that's what I believe these collaborative art projects allow us to do. That we can build a fort, we can put our photos and our artwork all over it and discover the magic that's already in us. And so as facilitators, I think it's really amazing that we get to work with a group of people, and I believe in individualized genius. I think we all have it. We got stuff going on, and that we get to pull it out and make it seen. And not only for us, but for the people who are making it. And so there is just something to see your own artwork enlarged and valued and appreciated, and that you can see yourself outside your body. And I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but I cannot get over how exciting it is. So there are intimate projects, and then there are giant projects. So over the years, I've basically learned how to carve out how to create group experiences with massive amounts of people. So this is what is Honey for the Heart. It's a giant puppet making project. And in October, for 8 years, we've been doing a collaborative community project to elevate Athens Halloween. I don't know if you've ever heard of Athens Halloween, but we're famous for our debauchery and silliness. And so we wanted to elevate it. And we decided to do it as a community. So we have about 2,000 people work on this project over a 3-week period. And we do a homemade, homespun parade. And it is an absolute blast. And so basically, if you can attract people in and create an environment for them to be comfortable and be engaged and productive, you can get a lot of stuff done with happy people. So the experience is monumental in the numbers of people that participate, but I know that the individual experience is carried beyond the event. that memories are made that will last forever. And that association of joy and community and is associated with our town of Athens, Ohio, and is associated with Athens Halloween, which was the thing that the locals just said, oh, I'm out of here. I'm going away. This thing is too crazy. But we've managed to make it a more centralized, universal experience, opposed to just the students' experience taking over our main street of Court Street, but making it a full community experience. And this little girl, I know that, you know, she took vacuum cleaner hose and some driftwood and paper mache, and she turned into an elephant. Now, if that's not magic, I don't know what is. And I know that's going to stay. It stayed with me. I know it's going to stay with her. So what I know to be true is that the creative process is sacred territory. I am absolutely honored that people will come into whatever space we create, and they will enter and make with us. And, you know, because after doing artist in residency work for 3 decades, I often talk to people, and I can hear them tell me when they stopped making. And it just breaks my heart. It's like, what stopped you from creating? And it could have been a sharp word, not intentional, but it was there. I'm not creative. Jimmy was creative, but I'm not creative. So I better stop, because I'm never going to be a professional artist. I'm never going to do this. I should go do something practical. Well, there's nothing more practical than exercising imagination, creativity, and turning a stick into an elephant. If you can do that, I want to hire you. And lots of people want to hire problem solvers. So there's lots of reasons to encourage creativity. And so when people come into the space that we offer, I know that a lot of people are vulnerable. I know that maybe they haven't made anything since the 5th grade. And we want to have that experience be a loving experience and an expansive one. So it is magical, but we are tender, and we're revealing ourselves, and it makes us vulnerable when we make things. And so our focus is on the end piece, but it's really about the process. And when I started as an artist in residence with the Ohio Arts Council, they kept saying that over and over again. It's about the process. And I was like, I don't understand what you mean. And now I do. I understand that that final piece may be lovely and great, but the process is what's so important, to fall in love with making, because art making is practice. All you do is you make something, and it informs you for your next thing. But if you get broken during your process, there's not going to be a next thing. So it is about discovery and celebration and excitement, and the hope that through experiences that we deliver and facilitate, we can create a love for making that is lifelong. And that how we deliver these experiences really can change the way people think about themselves for a lifetime. And that is powerful. And what a gift we have to create environments for people to think, I can do that. Sure, let me try. I don't know how to do it yet, but I'll figure it out. Problem solving, huge. So what this whole idea is about, that I'm gonna I have this golden ball that I've been studying for 30 years, and I'm so happy that I can hand off this golden ball to a group. And the nugget is, you set up the structure and you surrender the process. No matter what it is, you set up the structure and then you surrender the process. And one of the simplest ways to describe this is with circle paintings. So this is inside Passion Work Studio. And this is fabric and paint and a group of students from Ohio University, passion work artists. And so the structure was set up with tables and brushes and palette, and then the invitation to paint circles. And then I stepped away because my job is to be the host and to create the environment, to get the music going. There's nice light. There's everything that I can do to create an inviting experience so that people can experiment. And what's more satisfying than painting a circle? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you get to do it again and again and respond to each other's circles and colors. So simple, and never the same twice. And that's pretty cool. So with circle painting, if you just provide something to paint on, a color palette, and know your audience. You may have people who have never painted with the full rainbow. And it's okay to paint with purple and yellow and make brown. That's fine. But if you're providing an experience and you want to have a little bit more control, you can orchestrate. It's okay. Like you can have a cool colors and you can have warm colors. So no matter what is mixed up, those are going to be gorgeous, juicy, warm colors. So provide the experience, the structure for success. And in time, there's always time to make brown. Mush, but like at the beginning, just set up for success. And please paint some circles. And then you back away. You're present, but you're not hovering. There is a thread to creativity. When people are in the flow and they're doing their thing, it might be a time not to say, great, that's beautiful. Just let them be. And if somebody's having trouble, sidle up beside them and start telling jokes and start making circles with them, do them together, whatever it takes, but read the room. The whole point is for people to find that flow and to make. So you surrender the process and people it's like such a familiar activity that they've never done before. And I love that. And there's a comfort to knowing what's expected, but the freedom, there's enough freedom in there to not feel like you're being told what to do. And it always works. It always does. I always have a circle painting project in the room because if somebody's getting frustrated with another project, they can self-navigate over there and always start doing that thing. So it's always there. And there's enough direction to feel safe, but nobody wants to be told what to do. So there's such a balance. And people are connected with others, but they're doing their own thing. Conversation is welcome, but it's okay to be quiet. So you can have some talkers in the group, and you can have some people who are just really quiet and listening. And that's cool. So nobody has that social anxiety because there's something going on. We're part of the group because we're actively engaged in a group activity, but we don't have to feel nervous like people are watching us. And it just feels good to be in these environments. And every time the results are different because every time you have a different group of people, and let alone the color and the approach. So we have a group of Ohio University students painting these circles at Honey for the Heart puppet project. And then there's Tina Kelsey. And the last group came in with Sharpie markers and outlined the circles that the first group did. Beautiful, created nice contrast, gorgeous. It was fine. So when we collaborate, we get to celebrate together. And there is like something about making art yourself and like saying, look what I did. And it's cool, man, that's awesome. But we don't really encourage collaboration in a lot of classrooms or in traditional art making. Like I know at the university, it was like your project, your idea, deal with it, get it through, make it happen. And I never really understood that because I studied photography and I've never taken a picture where I wasn't collaborating with another person if I'm taking a portrait. I mean, I'm always collaborating to make sure that my equipment is okay, that I have, you're collaborating all the time. So why not during the creative process? Why not? And it's fun. It's fun, which I'm a big believer in. So the big gift here as a facilitator with this collaborative process and ongoing is that you don't have to come up with fancy ideas every day. Because I think a lot of times with art projects and facilitating art is that the project idea is the stimulus. And if that's the stimulus, then there is so much responsibility and weight put on the facilitator. But if the ideas are coming from the group, then you get to be a collaborator in where the direction of the project is going. And so if your project reveals that you find something that people like to do, you just do more of it. So as a facilitator, here's Orlando. He loved drawing on these circles that we made, just loved it. And so then we had a ton of circles. So what are we going to do with them? Well, they're going to have a life after mark making on them. And then when this installation was built, it's about the group. It wasn't about Patty Mitchell. It was about our group. And that is exciting. So as a facilitator, it's not as though you're a ghost. You're part of the expression and the possibility. And you've also studied, like you've been studying your craft, so you can get in there and be brave and say, yeah, let's put these circles on the wall. Yeah, let's get a flashlight because there's CDs in there and we can have a light show. You know, it's so your voice is part of the collaborative process. And that is okay because you're part of the team. So as we go and we make these circle paintings, the material that's created then has the second life. It can go on and be different things. And it's okay. If you say circles and something else happens, it's okay because you surrendered the process. You set it up to begin, and if it goes in a different direction, you know, your dance partner's dancing a different dance. That's okay. Is it more important to get everybody to make those circles, or is it more important to have this energy flow of discovery and seeing how paint mixes and going? And you've surrendered the process. You're being responsible. It's okay. And so these circle paintings can become other things. So here we are at the Ohio University Homecoming Parade, and we made costumes and our float and giant flowers out of this rich material with so much handwork in it. It already had all this excitement and energy. And we can involve other groups into our fold. So Turn It Gold is a movement, it's an organization that promotes childhood cancer awareness and research. And it is a big, giant force on the Ohio University campus. And it involves athletics and athletes, and basically it's to create the awareness that only 4% of research dollars are dedicated to pediatric cancer research. I know, you can't believe that's true. Isn't that the nuts? 4%. So basically kids get a watered down version of adult care, and which has exhaustive, terrible results in later years after people have gotten their treatments. And also, kids with Down syndrome have 20 times more likelihood of getting acute cancer, leukemia, by nature of there's their chromosomal situation. But anyway, it's 20 times more likely. So that's a little known fact. So a lot of kids with Downs aren't, it's not recognized as quickly as it could be. So we have teamed up with Turn It Gold. And because we make things, we can create the visual evidence of other people's movements, of other organizations. And we can lend our talent, space, vision to help promote our other friends. So here we are with the volleyball team on the left and Passionworks crew on the right. We made 48 banners that hung up and down Court Street in our main village of our city of Athens. There we are with the volleyball team, president of the university, painting, doing different things. So, you know, this experience of collaboration also gave the president of the university, you know, an hour to sit and make art and chat and talk with Ohio University students. That is a portal of communication and contact that is not typical, like with a meet and greet typical situation. So we're creating connection, purpose, and belonging through these experiences. And that is something that I personally don't take lightly. I am fully aware that if we do not have connection, purpose, and belonging, we fail to thrive. All of us. And so we can create these centers where that is sacred and that we want people to be well and we want people to have connection. So we take these circle paintings and then that we make with our community and at Passionworks, and we project images onto them for all different kinds of artworks and murals and things. So this is old school stuff, overhead projector. I'm going to assume that you guys know what this is, but if you don't, Google it. And you can still buy them. And they're really great. And they're great with working with people because you draw, you put a drawing on the transparency, a clear piece of plastic, and put it on this light table, and it enlarges. Now, if you want to blow some people and kids' minds, this is so much fun because they can immediately make a bunny that's an inch tall, and you can make it 8 feet tall in a matter of seconds. That is fun. So here we have drawings projected, painted, and worked into the circle paintings. And these were also banners that were hung on our lamp poles in uptown Athens. Look at that. I mean, you can just spend the rest of your life doing this. I mean, circle painting, art on top. It's like, you got it. And you can do circles on anything. It's not a flat thing. It's something that is accessible. It's really accessible. And so once you have these paintings, you can, you know, it's like making your own fabric. It's making your own patterns. This is a photoshopped image of a photo of one of the students with the circle painting superimposed as wings. And this is a quilt where the actual painting was cut down and made into the house. And so when this happens, people recognize their work and they see it elevated in this way. It is, they gave you a gift by making their art, and you get to return and echo and respond to that gift by bringing yourself into it. And it's super fun. Like when I see, sometimes when I'm doing a project, I'll see somebody do a drawing and they're like, oh, look at this thing. And like, I can cut that butterfly out and iron it. Like I have ways with Wonder Under and different things. And I can attach that drawing as an applique quickly to my outfit. And then surprise, like, and it's like, oh, what happened? And it's like, because art is magic. But if you realize you're giving a gift back, you can go to all day. You can make a fan. You can put it up on the wall. You can, oh, it's just really fun to play. So these circles can be on shapes that are already defined. This is a piece of wood that was cut out. And almost like a black velvet painting, just painting the wood black and then the colors on top. And then that cloth can be turned into dimensional pieces, puppets and cupcakes and pickles and carrots. So you can make giant carrots and food, and you can do a project to help your food bank, your farmer's market. Right, this is the Nelsonville Music Festival in Nelsonville, Ohio. You'll be hearing from Emily Prince later. And we worked together on building a woodland wonderland. Look at that snake. That was a circle painting, and that cupcake out of a lampshade. So the simplicity of it is the beauty of it, and the freedom within a safe boundary to begin. And then once you get into it and you realize what's possible, the edges start to blur and you can do anything. So this is my car in my driveway, and I do enjoy handing Sharpies and things to kids and saying, draw something on it. You know, going to garage sales and giving the kids some crayons, like, go ahead, just stay away from the windows. And they do. And then once you do something, what's really funny, and I love this, is that when you do something that's outside the norm just a little bit, people look at it and they're like, oh, can you do my car? It's like, why, yes, we can. Yes, we can. And, you know, having done this Audi convertible was a shock and a privilege, and very fun to drive, I must say. These are the doors of the armory in our town. We're turning it gold. And because we have this practice of, you know, we work with professional artists, and there is like very little fear at all. It's like, oh yeah, we got this. We can do this. Off we go. There's our crew inside Passion Works Studio. And getting ready. Oh, again, Nelsonville Music Festival. Birthday was the theme. We're making all kinds of birthday stuff. So one thing I want to say about this Zoom stuff, it's weird because usually if you have questions, I'm answering them during during this thing. But if you have any questions, like, I want to make sure that I answer them. So I just want to say that. I'm just talking. It feels like I'm just talking to myself. It's weird. Okay. So the origins of obsession with collaboration, circles, and creating structure and surrendering the process. Early days, I have been very interested in institutionalization. I had a brother who was institutionalized due to his developmental differences. And so it's always been a mystery to me as to what these places are. And so when I came to Ohio University, the mental health center was a running psychiatric hospital, and they had a program where students could live on ward in exchange for room and board. And so I was studying photography. I took advantage of this opportunity, but I didn't know anything about programming or running activities, and there was no training, nothing, nada. So I had locked men's ward, and I would do different activities, but the thing that was the strongest and most connective, one of the most, was just sitting and drawing with somebody, just side by side. And it opened up portals to connection and just being able to reveal ourselves to each other in this way. And that experience was so profound. I just knew the rest of my life I was going to be sitting next to other people drawing and making and figuring out how to do that. With deinstitutionalization, the hospital closed and things changed. I always wanted to build a studio within psychiatric hospitals. But I learned about sheltered workshops. and toured one in Athens. And what I saw was incredible space with interesting people that showed up every day. A sheltered workshop traditionally is like a factory style work environment that created employment and day programming for people with developmental differences. And I saw an arts center. Like, look at this space. Oh my God, what's better? What's better? I mean, a lot of these programs have these giant spaces. They're in warehouses, they're in old car dealerships. I mean, all different kinds of places. And I'm thinking, all right, we're going to turn these into community art centers. And so we began. And through the Ohio Arts Council, came in as an artist in residence. And again, just like when I lived at the Ridges, which was a psychiatric hospital, I had to figure it out. I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to make art with people. And so Stacy up here at the top left, you know, she wanted to draw, but her movement is her head. And so it's like, okay, let's make that happen. And it's crude in the sense that it's some Gorilla Tape and a brush and a thing, but it worked. It gave us information to make the next adaptive piece better. And then to really pay attention to what people like to do. So the woman on the right she draws monkeys over and over and over again. I'm like, dude, I love your monkeys. And so we made these big giant murals with her monkeys at the center. And you know, what's better than that? To see what you love appreciated. So everybody came to the table with something. And I met Bonnie, and she loves to rip paper. And it's like, all right, okay, you got that going on. You love to rip paper. What can we do? What more can we do with that? Because at the end of the day, every day at the workshop, I would say she would rip her paper, and then it would be thrown away, and then she would start again the next day. I'm like, no, this is a missed opportunity. Bonnie's giving us something. And so we started decorating paper. She would rip it, and you can see on the photo in the bottom that the paper was then collaged into a cloud. And that gave, you know, what a difference to give something value and to see it as an opportunity opposed to just keeping someone busy. Okay, tomorrow you're going to do the same thing. Tomorrow's going to do it. No, today we're going to turn your paper into a cloud. You're part of this mural. And you have a story. You have a connection. You point to something that says, I did that. That's me. And that's basically the nugget of everything, is to value what each other does and how you can bring your skills and assets to that in that collaboration for elevation. We all have something. And if the invitation and structure invites everyone, we can all be valued. And so it's, you know, with projects, it's like, oh, we can't have that group of people involved because they just can't do this activity. Well, alter the activity, add to it, have a component, figure it out. And it's doable. It's doable. And so this is Nancy Dick, and she is my guru. She is a circle painter, and my circles are in response to her circles. Like she's one of the most magnificent painters I've ever known, and she could turn anything and make everything better with her work. And I just followed that attraction. And today I have circles everywhere. I have them over my house, my kitchen. You know, they're joyful and fun and bouncy. And I get to think about Nancy with every circle that I make. And so I think it's funny that you can build a career and a life grounded in such simple concepts, but they've expanded opportunities beyond what I ever thought imaginable. So this is a project in another sheltered workshop in Indiana, where they had 60 individuals in programming in a single room every day. And to make it work, we just set up stations so that people could self-navigate. They could go to the sewing area or the building or the painting and find where they were engaged. And that if they were tired of sewing or they wanted to go sit with their friend Cheryl, they didn't have to ask. You just go, figure it out, go where you want to go. So that staff isn't trying to engage individually, every person one at a time. It's the structure that creates the invitation and the exploration and the investigation. So if you have exploration and investigation, you have discovery. And if you have those, you got them. You have people doing their thing. And it's my favorite thing is to watch people enter these spaces for the first time and just go to where they are interested. So it's an investigation of materials, which means ideas too, and their areas are prepared for individual exploration, just like a restaurant. I think of an art room, art space, collaborative as a restaurant. So when I say create the structure and let the process be, as a waitress and a bartender for years, I knew it was really important to have the space ready and that people could have the experience. And I was there, but I wasn't eating the food. I wasn't sitting down next to people typically. You know, I was creating the environment for the experience to happen. And that's just like an art room. So if people have to wait for things, it's often creates chaos and whatnot. So you just want to be ready. You want to have your napkins folded and your silverware clean and water glasses filled. So in this is in this space we had just two areas to start. We had sewing and painting, and back and forth, people could go. And some people stayed at sewing all day and some people didn't, and it's okay because people found what they were engaged in. And then to start with something, like you can have an idea and you can be so attached to it that you cling to it. And it's like, no, we gotta have this. This is what I dreamt it was gonna be. Or you can let things go and say, yep, there's an idea. We can go down this path. So we were making strawberries for the Strawberry Festival. And one of the artists involved said, that looks like an alien head. Turned it upside down. I was like, dude, it does. He was totally into aliens. And as a facilitator, I could have said, that's true. Maybe we can do that another time. We're making strawberries today. Or, dude, make it happen. And so what joy to be heard and then to have an idea and see it manifest before you. So the strawberry turned into an alien head. The smock turned into the alien's outfit. We started going into this space tangent and somebody drew a rocket, and I have some cardboard making skills. So I was able to look at that drawing and turn the drawing into a rocket and then have aliens land. It's just silly. So it's, you know, I feel like it is like there's a what the beauty is that there is a constant that you can follow, and that the it's a very focused approach with the trajectory that is infinite. And so in this case, opposed to a circle, everybody's painting scraps of wood that came from a wood project that we did. And some people are doing fine detail. Other people like to do the big solid painting. Some people move really slowly. Some are really fast. And it's okay. It's okay. We're not timed together, synchronized in the speed. Nobody's waiting for somebody else to catch up because there's so much to do. If you're fast at painting something, make sure there's enough material to paint. If you want to spend all day putting polka dots on something, rock it out. It's fine. So Courtney loved to do the texture, and Dale loved to make drawings, so I was able to cut out some wood, turn his drawing into a little wooden sculpture thing, and then bring everybody's work together to create this installation. Now, we didn't know that this was going to be what it was at the beginning, but that's the faith that you have through the process, is that something's going to happen. Something's going to click. And if you don't know what that is, it's okay. But that's where, as a facilitator, you get to be the brave one, because you believe in the process and you believe something is going to reveal itself. And if you're brave to jump that valley, magical things will happen. I promise. And that's where a lot of people stop, is like, oh, I don't know where this is going. We got to go do something. Push through it, keep going. And you'll find some answers. And you get to, you surrender the process, but in reality, you're in control all the time. Like, I always think I'm the goalie at the end of the day. Like, everybody's doing their thing, but I make sure that it makes sense at the end of the day. I have final say in the thing. So if that gives you some comfort, it's not just throwing a bunch of cardboard into the middle of a room and say, have fun, see you in 2 days. No, you're part of the whole mix in what happens. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is creating employment that fits people, that people enjoy their job. And at Passionworks Studio, we're an art first studio. It's what we do. But employment's impossible. And creating, profit so that we can invest in our studio to keep making art it's a business model that is necessary. We want to generate our own funding as much as possible. So one of the things that I learned in a sheltered workshop in a factory style environment, that in Athens County, people were assembling pens, and they were putting caps on pens, and some people had done that for 30 years. And if you have cerebral palsy, or you're just a human being, you don't do the same thing every day. That's really hard. So it's like, what can we do? What can we do? And so we just started making art. And Carolyn Williams, her thing, making flowers. She's been making flowers as long as I've known her. And in 1996, we started doing art projects. And we embedded her beautiful flowers in all the artwork that we were making. We would just throw in a flower. What the heck? And then we had a visiting artist, Kate Kern. I believe in visiting artists. You have somebody come in and share with you their craft that they have studied for years. And you have this infusion of ideas, and it's just unbelievable. So Kate Kern, she's in Cincinnati, and she came in and she showed us paper sculpture. And we decorated paper, and then we cut it into petal shapes and attached it with staples. And I fell in love. I was like, man, a 2D object turned in 3D. This is awesome. And a person at ATCO, which is the sheltered workshop, brought in a stack of printing plates from our local newspaper. She's like, I don't know if you can use these, but there's plenty more where they came from. So we started using them as an art material, very thin aluminum. And as we were decorating them, we learned that we could cut them with scissors. And we could take Carolyn's petal shapes and turn them into flowers. Like Kate showed us, but these would last. These could be outside. And we could create employment for people to do what they love to do. And today we've sold over 30,000 flowers. We've made 1.75 million in sales that has been invested back into our organization. They're the official flower of Athens, Ohio. And they're everywhere. You go for a walk, you can see them on porches. They're throughout the university. People give them as gifts, awards. Students really find a way in and identify. They go to Ohio University, but they went to Athens. They talk about Athens as this place. And we partner with other artists to make, in this case, Tina's Tiaras, to make tiaras. And that we make giant paper mache ones. I mean, we'll do anything. We decorate restaurants. This is Purple Chopsticks on Richland Avenue. A lot of weddings. Casa Nueva in Athens. And music festivals. We are at the Athens Community Music Festival. Fountains. You just don't know what's going to happen. You just don't know, Terry Grimm. But I'm always so grateful to Carolyn and her enthusiasm and her dedication to her craft. So this is it. Create the structure for investigation, pay attention to what people are interested in, and then just do more of it. And then start again. And literally, that will bring you to experiences that are just so profoundly beautiful and in their collaborative nature and in their sharing. So I thank you.
Thank you so much, Patty. That was just great. The circles, the cars, the flowers have just inspired us in so many opportunities. So I thank you. I would suppose we've maybe got just a couple minutes for a question or two if anyone wants to unmute their mics. Otherwise, Patty will stay with us through the morning and be available at 12 o'clock. All right, no one's jumping forward, which is fine. That'll let us stay right on schedule. Let's see. I'm going to go back to my share screen. Next, we have working with visiting artists and artist residencies with Sharee Price, the Gifted Services Coordinator from the South Central Educational Service Center. Sharee Price graduated from Morehead State University and later received a Master of Education with a concentration in Fine Arts from the University of Rio Grande. She began teaching art at Portsmouth High School in 1980, continuing there for 27 years. In the summer of 2007, she accepted her current position as the Gifted Services Coordinator at the South Central Ohio Educational Service Center. She currently serves 14 school districts, coordinating both artistic and academic programs. Sharee is a practicing artist and an art instructor at Shawnee State University, where she has taught for over 25 years. In 2015, she was awarded the Portsmouth Area Council Arts Educator Award for Artistic and Creative Excellence. She has been a member of the Ohio Art Education Association for 33 years and has twice won the Outstanding Art Teacher Award for Southeastern Ohio. Sharee takes a special interest in bringing art to her community, utilizing various art programs to connect community organizations, the university, and local businesses with school districts she serves. I will now turn the monitor and welcome Sharee for her presentation on working with visiting artists and artist residencies. Sharee, you might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that.
All right.
I just was saying that, Patty, that's a tough act to follow, but I'm going to do the best I can. I really enjoyed your presentation. as Jared said, I taught high school art for 27 years before I came into this position. And when I came into this position, I had participated in artists in residencies, but I had never organized my own. So I leaned heavily on the Ohio Arts Council, and they have been an amazing resource to me for ever since. So thank you, Ohio Arts Council. You do amazing things for people all over the state, art teachers in particular. So the slides that I'm going to show you are, actually I'm going to share with you 10 different residencies. I have a ton of slides, but they're all pictures. So I think that we learn the best from seeing, at least I know that I do. The very first residency that I did in 2007-8 was with Hal Walker, who is a musician. He's an amazing musician, and he was just phenomenal with the kids. So if any of you ever have the chance to work with Hal, I would highly advise doing that. Most of the residencies that you are going to see are 3-week residencies, just so you get an idea of the timeline that I was working with. So for this particular residency, the Northwest Elementary entire 4th grade was our core group. So I started out very bravely working with a lot of people. Hal came in, and each one of these students received their own harmonica. They were very excited about that, and they all learned how to play a variety of songs. We also had peripheral groups going on. The peripheral groups met at the Southern Ohio Museum, and we had a half a day they toured the museum, and the other half of the day they worked with Hal. So for this particular group, he had them making very simple rhythm instruments out of prescription bottles. They decorated them, they put like beans or rice or whatever inside to make shakers, and then they accompanied Hal, and they did various songs. The Minford Middle School group came in and worked, they learned how to play banakulas. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but banakulas are a rhythm instrument. You can see some laying on the floor. Hal is a master at playing the banakula, and the students they loved this. So again, they spent a half a day at the museum, and then they accompanied Hal with this new rhythm instruments that they had learned. The Wheelersburg Elementary group came in, and they were specifically looking at artwork that was on display in the museum. They were trying to connect visual principles of design with music principles. So they were looking, in particular, they were looking at this piece, and they were talking about rhythm and how that related to maybe percussion in a piece of music. It made them begin to realize some of the connections between different art disciplines. This group, the CAPE School, CAPE is our Center for Alternative and Progressive Education, and these were mostly high school students. They also received harmonicas and were amazingly receptive to working with Hal. We weren't quite sure what to expect, but they just were completely engrossed. This gave me ideas for other connections in the future, which you'll see in the very next residency, actually. This was the final sharing. The 4th graders performed their songs. The entire student body was there, parents were there, teachers were there, and they felt very proud of their accomplishments. And it was a great day. This is certainly one that could not happen right now during the COVID crisis. You can see how everybody is packed together there, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, I think, for everyone involved. The very next year, I brought Hal back, and we partnered with 12 school districts, CAPE again, a retirement center, and the museum. This is Hal performing in front of the student body at the high school. And here he is working with the high school art class. They were the one of the two core groups for this residency. And I think you can see there on the table, he is teaching color theory using clay. And then they're going to make these sort of like sticks where they've mixed the clay up and they flatten it out and they make their own banakulas. So they're learning color theory and they're making banakulas. There you can see a student pressing the pieces of clay together. And here are some of the banakulas that they created. These are all student made. At the same time, the second core group was working with how, and they were learning about music and visual art. These are just dowel rods that we cut to a particular length to use as rhythm sticks. And so they are learning how to use those rhythm sticks to create a beat for music. Again, how accompanied them, and they began to learn about a little bit about percussion. They also continued their learning on the harmonica. For those who came back, they still had their harmonicas, but we provided harmonicas for the new students and included them in that, learning how to play the harmonica. And here the CAPE students are also making their own banakulas, and they really enjoyed the process. In every residency, I try to do a teacher professional development, and here it was the high school teachers, again, learning how to teach color theory using that clay and then making banakulas themselves. This was the final display of all the students' banakulas, and you can see the rhythm sticks propped up in the corners there. The CAPE students decorated those, and some of the art students, I think, as well. But it made a really nice display, which was in the main hallway at Portsmouth High School. And there are some of the students and their teacher, April Deacon, down there in the corner with Hal, making the International Banakula symbol with their hands. So the final sharing for this one was at Hillview Retirement Center. Hal brought the CAPE students in with their rhythm instruments and harmonicas, and they performed for residents at the retirement center. And here they are performing one of their pieces. And this was just a great connection because the residents were so receptive to these young people and asked them questions, interacted with them in a very positive way. And the students just came away feeling like they had done something, they had just performed a concert, they had done something miraculous. So it was another very positive experience. In 2008 and 9, the same year, I did another second residency, and this one was with Roger Jerome, who's a theater artist. Everything in this residency was based or was part of the Big Read Project, where we were partnering with the Literacy Council. And South Webster High School was the school that we focused on for this. The book that they were reading was To Kill a Mockingbird. So everybody read the book before Roger ever arrived. And then the students wrote their own vignettes that were based on themes within the To Kill a Mockingbird story. They performed their vignettes in front of the entire student body. And they also did a performance at the museum on their stage. The students also visited the museum and looked at artwork that was narrative in nature, and they talked about themes in the artwork. And then the high school art students at the same school were invited to make altered books based on the To Kill a Mockingbird theme. These books, they turned out even better than we thought they might. The kids did an amazing job. They worked with so many different materials. They were so inventive with the way they put things together. And the books were actually displayed in an exhibit at the museum. Here that a student worked with pressed glass. Some of them include stories from their own family history. They were just, I thought they were very sophisticated for high school students. In 2009 and 10, Bill Wade and Inlet Dance Theater came to Portsmouth, Ohio. There were always at least 3 dancers here at a time. Sometimes they were more. They switched in and out, traveled back and forth from Cleveland to here, which is from one end of the state all the way to the other. We had a huge number of people involved in this. You can see all the different entities that we partnered with, but the main ones that we partnered with were the West High School Music Department and the Cirque d'Art Studio, which is in downtown Portsmouth, and the Portsmouth High School Art class and maintenance building class. The very first day, the Inlet company came to West High School to perform for the entire student body. And some of the administrators were pretty nervous because they weren't sure that this was going to hold the attention of all the students. But it so much more than held their attention. You could hear a pin drop. They were completely engaged in what was going on the stage. And this was a great way to start the residency because it got everyone really excited. Here's the core group of the choir working with their music teacher, Linda Tiemann, who is an exceptional music teacher. And she did a great job of allowing us to come in and really integrating it into what she was also doing in her classroom. Here is Bill's first day of rehearsal with the choir students. And then in the evenings, he was working with the Cirque d'Art students in their theater in downtown Portsmouth. The art students got involved by creating drawings. We were aiming for a final performance that would be called Jewel Tones. And so the students made sketches of ideas for props and sculptures that could be on stage with the performers. They then turned those into cardboard models and painted them. Here's another model. And then we brought in the building and property maintenance class, and they actually turned those models into full-size sculptures made out of wood. And there they are with one of the pieces. And then the art students came back and painted those sculptures to match the models that were made out of cardboard. The art students also worked on making large gemstones out of cardboard and painting those. And here's Bill during one of his many critiques of what the students were doing, and he's giving feedback and thoughts about what they might add to it, how the performers could move around within these pieces of work, and so on. There, you can see that, well, it's in various stages of being completed, but it gives you an idea of the size of the sculptures. And then another thing that we did, the museum was opening an exhibit called Sawdust and Spectacle. And it was a circus exhibit. So for the opening celebration, the students, together with Bill and some of the people from his company, they did a museum stroll. So here Bill is helping one of the students get his makeup done. Here they're getting ready to go out into the main exhibit space. And here they are in the exhibit space. So these characters, these sort of circus-like characters, were spread out all over the museum. There was music playing. They were moving around through the space. So when people came in to see the exhibit, they were surprised, pleasantly surprised. It added an extra layer to the whole experience. This was another peripheral group of elementary students, and what they did with them was they taught them about costumes and how the costumes reflect certain characteristics of a character. And they had the students write little skits, and then they had to choose costumes that fit their character, and then they performed the skits. Other elementary students were in the art room creating artwork that related to the circus theme. To advertise for the show at the high school, we actually put some of the Cirque students in the showcases and had them like frozen as students were going between classes. This was sitting here with the little flyer advertising the show. Here's the rehearsal for the show, which took place at Shawnee State University on their main stage in their Fine Arts Center. And there they're rehearsing again. This was the flyer that was spread around all over the community for people to come see the show. And this is one photograph from the final performance, which went over very well. The kids really enjoyed it. The audience enjoyed it. It was win-win. In 2010, we brought Kate Gorman, who is a fabric artist, and we brought her in to work with students from, oh, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. We brought her in to work with students, gifted students, and the theme was Alice in Wonderland. We connected with the Portsmouth Public Library, the Literacy Council. We had a lot of connections again for this. The artwork that was on exhibit at the museum was Maggie Taylor's work. Almost Alice was the name of the exhibition, which is Maggie's version of the Alice in Wonderland story. If you've never seen Maggie's work, you should look at it. It is amazing. She does her work in Photoshop, and it's thousands of layers built upon themselves to create these wonderful visual images. So the students all got to see this work prior to beginning on their own work. I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself here, but this was the opening at the museum where the Mad Hatter was making announcements. And we had the Cirque d'Art students dress up in costuming related to the Alice in Wonderland story, and they performed dances and did the stroll thing through the museum again during the opening celebration. Here, students are studying the artwork and talking about how it was made. Those same students got to go to the Cirque d'Art studio and learn a little bit about aerial dance, which they really enjoyed. The core group began working on this Alice theme. They made sketches, and we did a parent workshop where they're working with fabric to make those sketches into fabric pieces. And here are some of the fabric piece sketches that were done. So each student ended up with an individual piece of artwork that they could take home, but they also created characters that were reproduced into this final quilt that was made, which you'll see in just a minute. And there's the final quilt. It was exhibited at the museum for a little while, and then it was taken to its permanent home. It was donated to the pediatric unit at the Southern Ohio Medical Center. So lots and lots of people get to see this quilt. The kids can all see their own hand in it, the piece that they created, and how it was integrated into the overall design. Several years later, We brought Kate back to work with Portsmouth High School students to again do wall hangings. And this time the wall hangings were intended to go in the Cancer Center, the Southern Ohio Medical Center's Cancer Center. So here's Kate talking about her process. We involved a cancer survivors group. They came in, the students had pre-cut shapes of fabric, and we asked the cancer survivors to write words of hope on pieces of fabric. And they were also allowed to cut some of their own shapes if they wanted to, but these pieces were intended to make up specific parts of the quilt. There you can see some of their messages. And they were very involved in this. They really got into it. Again, the artist is working with the art teachers from all the different school districts, doing a workshop to explain how to do this with their students. So it carries out beyond just one school. It carries over to all the schools. At Portsmouth, the middle school gifted students got to make pieces for the quilt, and they actually made the flowers that were incorporated into the quilt. I teach a class at Shawnee State University, and we even went there and worked with them. They did not contribute to the quilt, but they made their own individual pieces. So they were just working with composition and using a very different medium from what they were used to working with. We also included people from the retirement center, the Hillview Retirement Center, and they cut pieces and also wrote on some of the pieces to be added. There's Chiquita Mullins-Lee from the Ohio Arts Council. She came down and worked with us at the when we had our little workshop at the Hillview Retirement Center. So here the students are, Kate is doing a critique with the students, discussing what still needs to be finished, what's looking good, what's working, what's not. And there are the finished pieces. One of them was, I don't remember the titles of them, I'm sorry about that, but one was sort of representing day and the other night and all the things that you could interpret along with that. We had an opening or an unveiling celebration at the Cancer Center, and these are some of the people that attended. There we are unveiling the work. And again, this was a very positive experience because the students were giving back to the community with their talents. And also the community was involved because we brought other people in to make pieces of the whole entire thing. Matt Paskiet is a glass artist, and I brought him to Northwest School District to work with those students on a project. And this was actually to go in our local hospital's Life Center lobby area. The Life Center is a meeting place, a community center, exercise place. They do physical therapy there and so on. The very first thing that happened prior to Matt arriving is the art teacher, Chris Enns, got a brand new kiln, really because this residency was happening and we needed a kiln that would fire the glass and could be used later for clay. So out of this whole thing, he ended up getting a kiln that he might not have otherwise gotten that is, being used for years to come. We took the core group to the Life Center so they could walk around the center, and the idea was that they would find things of interest within the center, make sketches of those things, take notes about them, and then they're going to turn those into glass panels. And we wanted it to be sort of a Where's Waldo kind of thing. So people could come in and see these glass panels and then try to figure out where these things were within the Life Center itself. Here's Matt teaching the students how to cut glass. Again, he went to Shawnee State University and worked with my 2D class. And what they did was they made small pieces of jewelry. So they really enjoyed it. The teachers again, I think the teachers made sun catchers if I remember correctly. Here's Matt with the students working on the panels, and you can see a panel laying there on the table. There's one of the finished panels after it was fired. We did a parent workshop where the students became the teachers. There's one of the students and his father. Again, we had an unveiling in the lobby, and there are the finished panel pieces. So most of these things you're seeing little bits and pieces of things that are found all around the Life Center. The hospital has been a great partner because they're so appreciative of what the students do, and they're so proud to display it. The administrators were happy because their school's getting noticed out in the community through this artwork. And of course, the art teacher is happy because he's bringing new art mediums and new artists into the classroom.
Sharee, this might be a perfect time for a question from the chat.
Okay.
Cindy Kerr has asked if you get you gather the ideas for the residencies from the teachers and then plan forward.
So what happens, I have to try to spread the residencies around amongst my 14 school districts. So I try to find a teacher that I think may be interested in something. Find, in some cases, like with a lot of times with my art teachers, I try to find out what their passion is themselves and see if I can match that up with an artist that can come in for a project. But certainly the teachers, myself, and the artist, we do a ton of planning prior to the start of a residency. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think it's perfect.
Okay, great. So this next artist is a wonderful example of that because for this residency, the art teacher that was already in the school really loved photography. And so Gary Harwood is a photographer. And Gary is all about using images to tell a story. That's his thing. So Gary was brought in and we connected with the entire community in a really big way. We wanted the students to go out and take photographs with the theme in mind of finding something positive about where we live. I think most of you may be aware we have an opioid crisis here, and that seems to be what the outside media wants to come in and focus on. So we were trying to do something to kind of make people think about what's positive here instead of just the negative. Gary talked to the entire student body and shared his photographs and talked about his practice, his creative process, and the students were very engaged in what he was saying. We took the art students, we spent a full day, which was pre-planned by the art teacher and myself. We took them from place to place to place, which were some of the places we knew about that were positive things. So on the left there, that's at the local no-kill animal shelter, Sierra's Haven. At the top center is the 14th Street Community Center. The bottom again is the Cirque d'Art Studio. And at the right side is the hospital itself, and you can even see one of the quilts from a previous residency hanging there on the wall. So we wanted to focus on things that were positive in our community. We also brought in later, and she completely volunteered to do this, so I will always be appreciative to Kelly, but she is a graphic designer, and she came in as we started working on this. We thought this would make a really amazing book project. And so she started talking to the students about page layout for a book. And there you can see some of the page layouts that ended up being done with the students' photographs. Again, we did a teacher in service, and we spent a lot of time talking about the editing process, which can be really painful. When we started working on the book, that was one of the things that Tiffany, the art teacher, and myself were concerned about, was students having their feelings hurt because their piece wasn't chosen to be in the book and so on. But Gary has this amazing way of working through it and having the students come to their own conclusion of what needs to be here to tell the story and what might be a really nice photograph that just doesn't quite fit into the story. They made the decision themselves with guidance. Here again, Gary came in and talked to my college class about photography and again about the editing process. So he laid out a whole series of photographs and asked them to narrow it down to, I think it was 10 or something, that would tell a story without needing any words. So it was a really interesting exercise for the students. We had a reception for the high school students where they put their image up on the big screen and talked about why they took that photo or why that was one of their favorite photos and so on. Again, it was an evening. They were just really proud of the work that they had done. They took thousands and thousands of photographs. Here people are talking to them. They have their sketchbooks laid out on the table with their own photographs in them, and they're talking to people about what they were doing, how they took the photos, where they took them, and so forth. And here is the final production, the final book. So we used an aerial map of the Portsmouth area for the cover of the book. One of the students did the calligraphy to put the title on the book, which was In This Place. And they were published, and we donated a number of them to the Cancer Center so that patients could look at them while they were receiving IV therapy. We donated to the local library. We donated a bunch of books. We had a big book signing where the students all came in and signed all the copies. It was a great experience. We also sold some of the books to try to make a little bit of money back for future projects. That was the last year of the Artist in Residency program at the Ohio Arts Council, and they switched over to Teach Arts Ohio. So Teach Arts Ohio had a pilot program here in Portsmouth with April Deacon, the Portsmouth High School art teacher, and she had already been involved in that process for 2 years. So since I can no longer apply to the Arts Council for residencies myself, I joined up with April for the Teach Arts Ohio Phase 3 of the Human Rights Garden project. So we partnered with Kelly Babcock again. This time we brought Kelly in as the teaching artist. There were too many partners to even try to list them all for this project. Again, it was a 3-year project. Here's what was completed in year 1 of the project. As you can see, it's huge, it's beautiful, it's filled with student artwork in every nook and cranny you can imagine. The students designed the overall design of this. The footprint for this is based on an international symbol for human empathy, and it just fits perfectly. In the following year, this garden has extended out from the arms that you see there on the footprint of this. Here are some close-ups of the Human Rights Garden. Students who worked on it. Students planting. It provides a really pretty place if you just want to go for a little walk and sort of contemplate. It's a nice quiet space. So for phase 3, we wanted to actually add a food pantry to this, and also some more artwork and extension onto this part of the garden itself. So the students did action research within their own school about food insecurity. Kelly worked with the students to create art for the garden and for the food pantry. And there was discussion and planning for the food pantry itself, what it would look like, how it would be laid out, and so forth. Meanwhile, the Scioto County Career and Technical students were building the actual pantry. So this is the pantry near completion at the campus at CTC. It was moved to its permanent home near Portsmouth High School. It's just behind the school. And we brought elements of artwork into the pantry that sort of reflected things that were in the garden already and added artwork to the garden itself. So this was a huge undertaking, but a wonderful one. The food pantry is now serving the community. It's called Amy's Place because the English teacher at Portsmouth High School that year had been a huge supporter of this project and of other projects that were to help students, and she passed away from cancer that year. So it seemed very appropriate to name this after her. And last year, I did my own artist in residency, if you will, with a local artist, Claire Smith. I have known Claire since high school and have worked with her throughout. So we went to Valley High School. Claire is a printmaker, and we came up with this idea to have the students make prints that would be turned into banners to be hung downtown during a festival that we have called Friends of Portsmouth. So here Claire's talking about her work and teaching them basic printmaking terminology. We decided to use microscopic photographs of snowflakes as the basis for the students to do their work from. The core group made 12 by 12 inch linoleum block cuts of these snowflakes. They interpreted the drawings themselves. They chose what was most important to be there, simplified it down, carved them out, and printed them. There's all the blocks laying on the floor. And here the students are downtown. You can see up at the top there, that's a single one of their snowflakes that was put onto the banners for Winterfest. And those banners go all the way down the main street in our town. So it was a great advertisement piece for Friends of Portsmouth and the Winterfest, but also the kids got a lot of recognition from it. And that concludes my 10 years of residencies.
That was fantastic, Sharee, and you were spot on with time.
Great.
So thank you so much. There's one question in the chat from Suzanne, and she asks, so did you teach college and base your residencies through the college, but collaborate with the teachers with area schools also? And maybe...
The college, I teach classes at the college myself, and the main focus has always been on the schools here, the high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. But just as a peripheral, I like to take these artists into the college to share with students in my class. We tried several times to organize it for them to share with other classes. It was difficult to do. I'm not saying it couldn't be done. Would love to see it be done, but it's just hard to collaborate that and make it all come together. So it wasn't based on the college to start with. They were more of a peripheral.
Okay, very good. Maybe if there's any other questions for, let's see, there's something else in the chat. Oh, just great things. So many great partnerships. Very good. Well, that was fantastic as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did I hear anyone else maybe with a question? No. All right. Well, very good. We'll move on to our next presenter. And of course, you know, the easy housekeeping on this kind of presentation is that everyone can step away if they need to and come back. So I'm not really going to worry about taking any kind of a break. Oops, now I'm way down. Now, well, we get to move back to Patty. So I don't have to read her whole bio again. We know how fantastic she is, and we've already learned so much from the keynote. But Patty now has a presentation about adaptive instruction and inclusion. And so I'll stop sharing again and turn the screen back to Patty. Patty, welcome once again.
Thank you. All right. I'm doing my thing. Boom, there it goes. All right. So so to talk about adaptive ideas, how to make making available to everybody. So you guys saw that my early days, I was an artist in residence. I studied photography at Ohio University. And so I had to adapt what I knew about photography to get into the classroom without a darkroom, without, you know, the things that I was used to. So as an artist in residence, you're basically adapting constantly to environments, to new people, and to make things happen. And funny enough, just as a side note, and when I was in the 6th grade, a photographer came to my school, my class, and we developed film in the class. We went out to the playground and developed film. And that's when I decided to become a photographer. So my artist in residence, the effects of artist in residence work has happened since 1976. And so through that process, thinking about how, without a dark room, how can you involve photography? And in like this case, we used a copier. And so I'd go into a classroom and the copier would become the dark room to enlarge and make photographs. So again, working within the sheltered workshop environments to make art, and it was adapting to environments, to different bodies, and to make the art accessible. And the and, you know, and it's basically you just experiment until you get it comfortable and right, and then you do better after that. You're always doing better. So there's Serena, and you know, we made this big wooden easel that was really strong because she's really strong, and it just needed to have resistance as she was painting, and there were moments when it was better for her to just use her hands, which is cool. So just some rubber gloves and off she went. And there's Wendy and Marty, and Wendy and Marty would paint together. Marty would start the line and Wendy would follow his mark with water, and they would make these watercolors together. And this day when I saw Wendy sitting on the table adjusting to Marty, I was like, okay, we have something here. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out how to make just beautiful things with fantastic people. And so we did a first residency through the Ohio Arts Council. We made 100 paper mache birds, and that experience, I just fell in love with working with this population and the idea of having a community art environment and figuring it out. So as I've been working with people with developmental differences, I've been invited to introduce arts programming all over the country and all over the world. And here in Kosovo, as anywhere else, it's almost the initial thing to do is hand over hand. And so there's whatever that impulse is, you know, this mom, this loving mom with her daughter immediately did the hand over hand. And look at that. I mean, it's a hug, but it's also like, you know, this overtaking of this process. And I don't, my Albanian is terrible, but, you know, I gently, you know, just asked her through pantomime to release and just let her go. And she just kept apologizing for her daughter. And I'm like, no, you're good, you know. But look at what her daughter made, that blue painting. And her mom was so proud and happy, but it's pushing through that fear and allowing to what can happen. And it just, it's almost like a predictable thing when you're bringing art into environments and with people who aren't typically making. And here is this loving sister and her brother, and she's showing him what a house looks like and what a flower looks like by hand over hand. And sometimes when we do these presentations, we'll do that. We'll have people do hand over hand with their neighbor. And I tell you, it is absolutely so frustrating. I don't wish it on anyone. And so a huge chunk of my career has been to release the concept of hand over hand and to do anything else possible to make the artists in charge of their art and not be a grip for a pen and following someone else's direction. So there's the same brother with his, you know, he was building floor plans of houses and stadiums. And he had a whole different thing going on. Of course he did. And he's so happy and proud. Thailand, again, hand over hand, no matter where. And so it's cross-cultural. And I think that I have a lot of thoughts about this, but it's like we want to program the difference out of each other. And instead, like, let's embrace the difference with each other. Like, you know, if your head, if you have more control over your head than you do your hands, then let's use your head to make art. That's fine. So in thinking about how it can be different, here's Kathy, and she's drawing a flower, and she's getting help by somebody holding her arm so she had enough structure so that she could draw. And so that is the dance. It's like, okay, so that's informative. So this person, if the intention is to create an environment where Kathy doesn't need another human being touching her to make it work, what could that be? So here are Kathy's flowers, gorgeous. Turn them into giant flowers, made an installation. And what a treat for Kathy to have this point outside of herself, to see her drawings and to respect those drawings, that the spirit, like, so you still get the feeling of the Sharpie marker resting and getting that blob. It's like, that's part of that beauty in that. And those are just bed sheets that we painted and then projected and cut out. So where that arm is, that could be a little sandbag or a pillow under her arm. And instead of holding the paper down, that could be tape or a clamp. But that it's informative. We can use our bodies to find out what those points are to pay attention to, and then find the next step so that that person is independent. I loved this. This worked with this man, that his partner is holding the brush and he's doing hand over hand with her. He didn't want to hold the paintbrush, but he was okay with holding. That's great. That's great. And it worked. So if you use what you have, you got what you need, right? And so if your foot is the thing that you have access to and can maneuver, then that is your tool for making your art, and go with it. So here is in Chile, and this foot, and in Chile, we've done, with the Ohio Arts Council, we started studios in orphanages and programs for serving people with developmental differences, creating these community arts studios. And there's, so one of the things with the artists, the artists that we attracted to be working in the studios, they really wanted to bring people with developmental differences and different kinds of physical challenges into the community, because a lot of folks are not seen. They're institutionalized. And so here's basically performance art showing the delicate work that this artist can do with his paintbrush. He happens to use his foot, but what a demonstration right there out in the street, a great performance art. And going into the museums and painting. So with using what you have, here again, there's this physical dance. What do you need in order to make your work? And you can buy stuff. You can buy adaptive things. That's cool. You know, if you go that route, whatever, that's good. But you don't have to. There's a lot of stuff that can be used with its original intention can be transformed into its new purpose. So here we have a tennis ball, and there's a little clamp, and it's just drilling. You have to be careful, practice your drilling, and you drill through that tennis ball, and you have yourself a new tool. So focus on what you can do and what you would like to do. There's Tom. Tom, man, Tom, I just love him. And for years, he was so patient with me. I was putting paintbrushes in his hands and wrapping it with stretchy fabric and doing things. I was trying to like figure out how for him to paint, but in a position that was like what you would think is a typical way to hold a paintbrush. And luckily worked with an engineer who looked at Tom's body, and his movement was like this. And it's like, but I want it to be like this. And it's like, but it's like this. So he built this glove for Tom that made his natural motion easy. I was like, he blew my mind. Yeah, I was like, of course. Like, why didn't I see that? And that's why collaboration is so powerful. Because even when you want something so bad, somebody can come from a different angle and just blow your mind. And so we have this glove that he designed, and it has wing nuts and bolts and things, and I'm like, hot dog, but I can't replicate that. I can't make that. But Tom, look at that. He's off and running. Off he goes. So what I can do is take a garden glove and some Velcro, and I can replicate the concept for pennies. And so somebody who's never drawn before can have that chance of seeing and experiencing the feeling of mark making and seeing evidence of themselves outside their body. And so really simple material of insulation board. This stuff is magic. It's light, it's strong. You can cut it like butter with a utility knife, and you can prop it up against things and pin into it and staple into it. And you can make adaptive table and surface with it. And you can cover, that's what we do a lot of the circle paintings with, is cover with fabric and then just staple it or pin it underneath. So going into different environments and meeting people, it's like, okay, Penny, what do you got going on? And she wanted to use her head. And it's like, okay, so you go into the magic box of tricks and you find some things to make other things out of. And it's not like, so if you go in with an attitude of we are going to find what works, then that's the whole investigative Nancy Drew in it, like, let's find this solution. And what's super fun is not only for the artists, but for the staff and providers of service to see success, to see what somebody is celebrating. Like, look at that. Penny made this beautiful painting. And so it's also that she was working on black velvet. You know what happens when you put paint on velvet. I mean, it's gorgeous. And so coming as an artist in residence, you already know how to set up for success. So, I mean, it could be cool if it was, paint on Xerox paper, but there's an elevation when you have strong, beautiful materials too. It's respectful, and you get to like move ahead a few steps in the process when things are going to be gorgeous. But look at that. It's a paint mixer screwed in, and they got a cap and some duct tape. And now this isn't elegant, it's functional, and it's informative as to what works. And then you can always make it better. You can always find another thing that will, make it, but this worked. It worked. So, you start off with what you have, and then get a little bit more elegant. And then sometimes this is, again, you can see that insulation board here. And sometimes it's the exchange and the connection. And, so you can create the most independence possible. And then sometimes it's fun just to have a game, like this guy was such a jokester. And this woman, what a great staff provider she was. And they just played and painted together and just had a ball. And so that was the intention, was to create that connection, and just super, super sonic fun. So you can use a paintbrush, you can use your hand, you can use a rubber glove, whatever it takes. But here we have someone, she's painting using her glove. And to start off with, it was okay. So she was fast. You can see the blurred hand. She was super fast. And she moved that board. So it was like, okay, we have to steady this. But that steady, you can do that with a clamp too. And that clamps are just have 10 to 15 in the room at all times, different sizes. They just are so helpful with all kinds of things. Here you see the clamps propping up the board. And this is just up against some paint cans. And for this woman, she, just has this big old glove. It's the first time in her life she ever painted, and all it took was leaning a board up against some cans, getting a glove, and making the determination that we were going to find a solution. And poof, look at that smile. Unbelievable. So there's all different kinds of solutions to different problems. Not even problems, just challenges. Here we have David Dewey. He's been at PassionWorks for over 20 years. He's an amazing, amazing guy. And you can see this first generation adaptive piece is a piece of foam rubber that fit his grip very nicely. And then a hanger inserted into that grip and then bent around, because with his mobility, it's good for the pen to be further away from his body so he can see what he's drawing. And so that was winded around, and it worked, and it was cool. And then we worked with engineering students at Ohio University, and they studied what was homegrown, and they came up with this PVC pipe that was more stable and could be replicated, so that other people can look at this and make it, or maybe we'll make them and sell them, or build a kit or something like that. But it's a beautiful, really beautiful next generation for David and his making. And so David's just drawn on everything, big pawpaws and artworks and whatnots. David. So the more independent people are, the less waiting, less frustration. Boredom is the enemy of calm, because people will fill space with their own stimulus. And negative behaviors, which I believe are just communication for dissatisfaction of service, it's just information. So the things are ready, you get your restaurant ready, you got your water glasses filled and everything's going. People have their mobility issues solved. Get to work, off you go. You're making stuff and you're being incredibly productive. 32-year-old woman, first time in her life she ever painted. Now, it doesn't get much better than this when you get to be an artist in residence and have these experiences with people. And over and over, I just look at it. We pulled a hat out of the theater box. This was like some little yarn braid, some duct tape, and off she went. And I remember that day, got a call from her grandma, and her grandma was calling because she got paint on her clothes. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to get in trouble. And then she's crying because it was evidence that her granddaughter had been participating, and she was so happy. And that's what we all want. We all want to be part of something, connection, purpose, and belonging. We want to be part of stuff. We don't just want to watch others. we want to be part of. And this woman's a worker, incredibly productive. Early days, this is Stacy, and her head is her most controlled piece in her body. And this was one of the first times that I found a solution, and it was the safety goggles and some duct tape, and we had volunteers at PassionWorks, and making sure that things were working for her. And in time, not too much time, we figured out that we could clamp pieces of work onto easels, and Stace was, independent, but there was opportunity if she wanted to work with another person. So it was a choice, and she could make that choice. Clamps, clamps, clamps. So there are all kinds of things that you can access to make this equipment, and really simple stuff. And what I always have these things in a box ready to go when I do a project, because you get to puzzle piece it out, and there are some things that I've learned that do work, and these are the pieces that are dedicated into that box at least. Duct tape, Velcro, dowel rods, clamps, gloves, and toilet brushes. Oh my gosh, toilet brushes. Yes, toilet brushes. Everything can be something else. It can have an next life. And I learned the toilet brush at this project. This guy I could not get. Like, he was not having anything I was like offering, until somebody brought this giant box of toilet brushes in that they weren't going to use this brand anymore. And I was like, let's try it. And so we used the toilet brush as a paintbrush. It made a sound like a drum, and he loved it. And I was like, oh, all right. And so this is how he paints. He paints and he makes polka dots with this toilet brush. And of course, this man is nonverbal, and he had a joke. He had an attention, something that somebody else walking by would come by and they would connect and laugh, and he just loved it. He ended up in the newspaper. He's known, and I just love that. I love that. So all kinds of objects can be used. In this case, a tin can wrapped in with fabric and a little handle can be an incredible grip for some people. It fits right into the hand. And it's like, okay, that can be a paintbrush is basically just something that pushes paint around. It doesn't have to be a paintbrush from, a $15 paintbrush from wherever. You're just pushing stuff around. And so here we are. Look at that one. And there's Debbie Griffin, our friend at Goodwill Art Studio in Columbus. And she worked at PassionWorks for 2.5 years, and Ohio Arts Council Artists in Residence. Simply magic. Debbie Griffin. Whew. So if you're in Columbus, check out their studio, Goodwill Art Studio. And some texture. You can roll it. You don't have to hold on to it. Shower scrubbies. You can grab that thing. If you don't grab it, you can wrap it with elastic. So maybe you just need a little bit more meat to your paintbrush, so wrap it around, wrap some stuff, make it happen. And then we have things that are already designed to hold. And it's like, oh, look at that. We have this, somebody spent a lot of time figuring out how to work this detergent bottle, and let's use it. It can be an extender for painting. Just drill a hole, squish in your paintbrush, get busy. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. We have all these things that can just be, you can tape a paintbrush into that. And so it's, what can you do? And then once you figure out a few things and you have a couple successes, it's like, all right, let's go. Let's make it work. It's all an experiment. And there is so much that can be done. And this young woman, this was down in Mississippi, and we were painting together, and the staff told me, they took me aside and they said, this time during the day, she's typically strapped to a board because she becomes so violent to herself and others. And that day, She wasn't strapped to a board, which I can't even imagine. I can't even say it out loud. It just, but she was engaged. She was painting. She was making marks that were evidence of herself outside her body. She was making sound. She was part of a group. This isn't, I'm all about making beautiful things. I'm all about making things pretty. But this is about having a better life. And once you start in this direction, it is so addictive that it because the successes are so profound. And then it's like, well, we can't do that because our artists eat the paint. We got pica, we got this, we got that. We can't. Okay. So it's not that you can't, but the paint isn't the option. So what can you use? In this case, we just used some shaving cream, and the shaving cream became the art medium, and the exchange of ideas. You can draw into it on the table, take a photo of whatever's made. That photo can then become the inspiration for the next step of the project. It's like, okay, all right, so what does work? We can use colors. We just add a little color, use pudding. So if somebody's putting things in their mouth, it's like, all right, make it taste good. What the heck? Why not? We've got all kinds of desserts here you can paint with. So here we have a kid painting with pudding with his foot. All right, that's what he's got going. It's his life. You know, if he can move his foot, then let's use that foot. Let's make some art. Why not? And I'm telling you, when you find a solution to help somebody create, because we are creative beings, we can't help it. This is what we're designed to do. We're designed to problem solve and to live an experience. And when you are with somebody who's been told all their life that they can't do it, and in a moment, because you said yes, and you just created this little bridge for possibility, and you get this kind of response, it's a game over, man. You just can't stop. So here's Serena, good friend Serena. She's been with Passion Work since the very beginning. And Serena has cerebral palsy and is just a worker. She is up for everything. And over time, you know, again, we have a group of artists. We're not trained in figuring out adaptive, but we're trained in being responsive. And so we learned that with a gentle weight wristband, it was enough resistance for Serena to draw like narrative drawings. And so these are the first flowers she ever drew. And who would have thought that like a wristband, like that would be the difference? And I tell you, that day, Serena, she was like jumping out of her chair practically. We're crying. We're like, oh my God, Beaner, look at that. And look what she did. There's a Nancy Dick painting in the background, Serena on top, and Wendy Miner, our artist in residence, painted in those flowers. That's Serena's first narrative painting. Unbelievable. Because of, I think it was £1.50 pound. It was like something, it was nothing on there, but what a difference. What a difference in her life. So if we train the talent, we diminish the disability. And I love that. I mean, it's like, we're only disabled if a group says you're disabled. Like you can't do that. So you're not, you can't be part of the group. You're not, no, you're not, no, okay. You know, and it's this whole thing of being viable citizens. I mean, I've been to workshops where it was my first mind-blowing experience. I was working with this guy and he had an oxygen tank. And I was like, you know, is he okay? Is he all right? And they're like, yeah, he's doing okay. But he needs a lung transplant. And we were talking about it. And there's like, but he's not eligible for a lung transplant because he's not considered a viable citizen. What is a viable citizen? And he's considered not to be, so he's going to die earlier. So for me, this is like an understanding that if you do not prove yourself within society, you can be disposable. And that is not okay. So at Passion Works, we are driven to create our own economy and to be part of the fabric of our larger community and to demonstrate talent and value, not because we just like to entertain ourselves and do whatever we like to do, which is true, but it's to create the evidence that we are of value and we are not disposable. So that is why we are big and bold and bright and ridiculously over the top. It's so that we're seen, because so many people who are perceived as being different are not seen in community. That's why we have institutions. That's why we have people over there. We don't know what to do with them. Let's put them over there. And we say we're going to go right into the middle of the game and we're going to invite everybody into the party, but we are not quiet at all. So with circle paintings, making different things, sometimes adaptive equipment is just to invite people into the process, to make it a little easier. Even if they have full body function, if their mind is saying that they're not creative and they can't do things, sometimes adaptive equipment is to make it easier so they can have the experience to get them into the next phase. So here we are doing a circle painting. And I love that this group, they were all about like drawing the circles first and then painting them in. I'm like, cool, whatever, that's cool, we got it. And then going on top of it with this tennis ball, which works for people who may need a little bit more grip. It's like that's cool. Or you'd stick a little dowel into it and make it like a stamp. And so there you see like somebody holding. Next evolution, just a little prop so she can paint by herself. And then that. There it is. That's the winner. So that video is of a woman. We went in to do a project. So one of the things that I do in my consulting work with Susan Deloe is that we go into sheltered workshops and redesign the concept of possibility within these projects and in these programs. And Sammy, met Sammy, and they were like, oh, she is just not with us. She is cognitively not with us. And so Sam would be, she'd spend part of her day in one part of the building and the next part of the day in the other part of the building, because it was perceived that she was not cognitively with us. And I looked her in the eye, she looked at me back, and I'm like, there you are. I don't know, just because your body is different, anyway. So we went to a drugstore and got a self-inflating whoopee cushion. And we had that experience with Sammy. And Sam, she put her hand on that. She didn't have the strength to, I pushed it down, made the noise. She laughed, I laughed. Sense of humor, connection, eye contact. She's there. She's in her body. And that moment demonstrated to the staff that she was with us. And today she has a self-driving wheelchair. She moves her head to make it run. But when we perceive somebody to be less than or different or non-viable, opportunities just collapse, because that's checked off. They're done. What can we do? And it's like, if you don't demonstrate your worth and other people don't see your promise, your opportunities follow in line with what is expected, with in line with your potential. So the art making really can help tell a story beyond surface or perceived surface. So and it's a way that all of us who are making the art can communicate with others so that our friends can have a better life. To see what people do on their own and to see that as rich and valuable and gorgeous. If I made a career out of buying needlepoint kits and just working for people to replicate these kits and make it just like the box top, any success would almost be overlooked because it's a replication of somebody else's idea. It's not, you know, and the torture and the torment to try and replicate something that is not in your nature. But the free form of just seeing what happens when you mix paint and when you mix threads and materials, that's joyful. That's discovery and investigation. And that you can keep in tension and continue to discover. Also valuing what other people value. I met Austin in South Carolina, and the staff was like, well, this guy, he loves shoes. He's not allowed to talk about shoes, and he's not allowed to do any drawings about shoes. Why? You know, and maybe it's like, maybe there was like this idea of a fetish kind of thing connected to it. Maybe the guy just liked shoes. Like, so anyway, so, you know, as a visiting artist and a consultant, you know, you can often get away with stuff because they hired you for your perspective. And I take full advantage of that. And so with Austin, it's like, I didn't have to ask him to make, I just put this in front of him. And this man, unbelievable talent. Those are all freehand, right? And so he was drawing these shoes. We were enlarging them. We cut out wood, made that big giant wooden shoe. I was posting his art on Facebook, and people were asking to buy it, like out of the gate. Because the staff and the providers that were at the center, they're like, what is this guy going to do? Design shoes? I'm like, maybe. I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to do nothing if he doesn't get to try. And so now he's making these big giant paintings of shoes. And I just love it. So sometimes the adaptation is, as a facilitator, to recognize somebody else's passion is of value. That is valuable. And to, you know, hold people up, not try to, you know, it's like, you would just, my life would be so much easier if you were just a different person. Or my life could be just incredible if I recognize you as this fabulous person. You know, you pick, you get to choose. Dude, so good. And then to see the value in the work. You know, Jeannie she loves drawing. She loves drawing. And here's that blue insulation board. And for her, it worked really well as a teeter-totter. Like, she could move the board around herself and get to different areas. So that was her thing. It didn't have to be stabilized. And then, so my collaboration with Jeannie was, I like to sew. And so cut out her drawings and made this little banner, and then made this painting with everybody's work. Tom wrote his name over and over again. We got Carolyn's flowers. We got this going on, and stitching, sequins. And it became the cover of the book I wrote with Susan Deloy, who's my business partner here, Upcycling Sheltered Workshops. And so, you know, when you see something and you give it respect and value, it can have a life, just like the artwork, just like the person. And it also was the DVD cover for the PBS special Creative Abundance that PBS did on our working with sheltered workshops. Sean, so his gift is direction. So he would point to where the next piece of cardboard was going to go. We're making thrones, and he would point to the piece of cardboard, point to where it goes. I would adjust it. He would say yes, but staple it in. So Sean is the director. And then we made these thrones. He told us what color it was going to be. And then we made thrones for a hot dog festival. There's so much to do, people. So much to do. And apparatus, it's just the simplicity of a muffin tin with condiment cups so that you can control color and delivery. And if you have a little bit of tremor, you're all right. And its cleanup's cool. This is one of the biggest gifts I can give to all of you right today. Muffin tins and condiment cups. Unbelievable. It's just, I could go on, but it took a while to figure that out. And now for the finale. is the day a potato saved the world. So I was working, we had one day at this facility. We were just visiting, and there's this woman, Katie, and I was just walking through her, taking a tour, but I knew what she needed. And so I ran into the kitchen, and they had potatoes in there. I was looking for spatulas or something. They had some potatoes, and the potato was perfect. There was enough weight, which I learned from Serena's wristbands. She just needed some weight for the tremors. And then the paintbrush could be put in at any angle, right? And so that combination gave her the control to be able to paint the potato. See? Everything. And then this guy, one of my first huge lessons, I was doing a project, all these people, and I was introduced to him, and he's blind. And I thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're doing newspaper and tape, and we're making animals. I'm like, what am I going to give this guy? And I was distracted. I left him alone. And he had the time to investigate. And of course, he was fabulous. He felt it. It was felt the bunny, and he made this bunny out of tape and newspaper. And he taught me to give people space to be able to explore and investigate their own process. And I am so grateful for that lesson, because sometimes, like any artist struggles, any artist has to push through, and that's okay. And as a facilitator, you feel when the frustration tension is going, or when it's just an investigation, but to allow people that discomfort to find that. So though the materials of experience are established, we are poetic in our rearrangement of them. We are poetic in either making mashed potatoes or adaptive equipment, but the materials are consistent. It's how we use them that is poetic. And I thank you again. Have fun, make stuff. And like us if you like us, Passion Works on Facebook, we have ideas constantly we're putting up there. We'd love to have you as part of our crew on social media. All right.
Wow. Thank you again, Patty. That was inspirational and beautiful, and the comments in the chat are just amazing. Thank you. So you can sit back and relish in those. Are there any quick questions if anyone wants to unmute, or I don't hear any really quickly. So now we turn, I suppose, to the next grand question of, oops, not there yet. Of course, we have to find funding sometimes to do these great projects. And I'm really excited to share the next two presenters who are going to present Demystifying the Grant Process, a Practical Guide to Grant Writing. Both of these presenters are members of the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education Board. First, Megan Fitze currently serves as the Director of Programs for Art Possible Ohio, where she pursues her passion for accessibility in the arts. Before Art Possible, Megan worked for the Masso Museum as the Education and Outreach Manager. While at the museum, she co-established an accessibility community, created audio description and sensory tours, and developed a sensory room. Megan has also worked for the Dublin Arts Council, the Columbus Cultural Arts Center, the Columbus Metropolitan Library, and Global Gallery. She currently serves on our board. She received her master's in arts education with specialization in museum education and administration from the Ohio State University. Secondly, Emily Prince is the education director and grants coordinator at Stuart's Opera House. Emily has been with Stuart since 2012. She also works in professional theater as a director and dramaturg, and as a musician performs with the noise improvisational group Dinner of Swords, and with poet Wendy McVicker in the group Another Language Altogether. She studied theater at Ohio University and graduated in the inaugural class of Leadership Athens County. She is the president of the Rotary Club of Nelsonville, serves on the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education Board again, and has served as a grant panelist for the Ohio Arts Council and National Endowment for the Arts. As a facilitator and community leader, she is trained and certified in both the art of hosting and air shift. She's a tireless cheerleader and advocate for Southeast Ohio Appalachian culture and homegrown artists. And I can attest to all of those things. So welcome, Emily and Megan. And we can't wait to learn about grant writing.
You. Okay, let me pull up the presentation here.
Yay, here we go.
Here we go. Now for a different color.
That's right.
All right, so we're just going to do a quick, Jared introduced us, but here, I'll let Emily share this slide and then I'll share mine.
Thanks, Megan. Hi. Later, if we have time, I'll take you on a tour of my office and you can look at all my passion work stuff and things that Patty and the artists have made. Like I'm looking at a million things right now that are, so thanks for that. Here I am with AJ and Walker Stone and Tatum and Mo LaRue, who are 4 kids who participate in our program. But not only that, one year, about I think maybe 5 years ago now, they always did a lemonade stand with a community yard sale that they used to raise money for their vacation to buy things. And one year they asked their parents, this is a true story. I know it doesn't sound necessarily true when you hear it, but it's absolutely true. They said, can we donate our lemonade stand fund to the Stuart's Arts Education Program? And so, you know, like people are coming and spending like $20 on a cup of lemonade, which is amazing. They've raised, they're starting now a fund with our Foundation for Appalachian Ohio, the Lemonade Fund. They've done this so many years and now they have business support and they generally raise with their lemonade fund about $3,000 a year. So they're starting a fund for our arts education program. So that's why I wanted to include them in my slide. This is what we do.
And this is my slide. We are Art Possible Ohio. We are the state agency for art and disability. If you're not familiar with us, you can just Google us to find our website if you want to learn more about the programs. I don't have as cool a picture as Emily, although this one is dear to my heart because this is my son, Wesley. He's a 2-year-old. He was not quite 2 in this picture, but this is also just a picture of myself that I like. So that's why I shared it. So today and Emily are going to do a basic kind of 101 rundown of demystifying the grant process. We are going to take turns. And we ask that you bear with us as we do that. Emily is going to start us off, and I will go ahead and advance the first slide.
So what we've put together is top 10 tips for grant writing. Most importantly, and we'll send this link out to everybody, I'll put it in the chat box here in a minute, is the Chronicle of Philanthropy has a top 10 tips for grant writing. And they include reading all of the guidelines and start small and start early. So we're going to do reading the guidelines. There they are. Yes, all of them, really all of them. And you're going to make mistakes and that's okay. Like, for example, what if you miss the line that says no hyperlinks? We're not going to look at them. And then you hyperlinked your whole thing because you didn't read it. Read them. Read the guidelines. Go ahead.
No, do you have more to say about that one?
Nope. That's pretty much the long and short of that.
Okay. So our second tip today, number 2, is find a partner. So in my 15 years of grant writing for nonprofits, I have found that finding a partner to write into your grant will bolster your grant significantly. So by this, I don't necessarily mean that you have to co-write your grant with a partner, although you can absolutely do that. But what I mean is find an organization or association that will provide a service or a direct product for your program that you're providing or your project you're planning. For example, say you want to enhance an after-school musical program in your school. Maybe call up Stuart's Opera House, ask Emily, hey, this is an idea we had, a program we want to run. Does Stuart's want to be involved? And Emily might say, absolutely, what were you thinking? And perhaps you say, we really want to do something on songwriting. And Emily says, hey, we have curriculum for that. We already have a program and an instructor in place, and here's how much it's going to cost, but I would love to help you with your program. Emily might even have another idea for you. So bringing in somebody from outside of your school, a local community organization to provide a service or project is going to be super beneficial. Benefits include, obviously, it just makes your grant stronger, but you often, you're not doing all the work. There's shared resources involved here. Emily can provide an instructor for you. Maybe she can even help administer part of that for you. A lot of times there are new ideas that come from this. So like I said, you might have all these great plans already, and your partner may bring something new to the table. That happens almost every time I bring in a partner, and it's one of the best benefits. And then you also might just make some new friends in your community, which is just a bonus.
Okay, call the program administrator. So this is a big one, and this was one that was hard for me beginning, because you think, oh, I don't want to bother them. No, that's their job. You're not bothering them. And just think about this as far as somebody like you. Wouldn't you rather head somebody off at the pass early on, perhaps a student who you were like, why didn't you ask? If you had a question, why didn't you let me know? You're a teacher. You're there to help the students. The program administrator is here to help you. Foundations have to give their money away. They want to give their money away, and they want to hear about your program, but they also want to be able to tell you yes or no before you go through the grant process. They'll help you. You can ask them just about anything. I have only had one bad experience calling a program administrator, which, so if that happens, the bad experience was I'm decidedly right about our program fitting with them, and they didn't think so. It was, you got to wrap it back around, because you want to leave everybody with a great impression of you and your program. But I've never, other than the one time, and again, I was right, they were wrong. They should have given me their money, but it'll save you a lot of heartache later on, going through what you think is an amazing proposal, and then the program administrator saying, well, it doesn't really fit with our guidelines. We would have advised you not to apply, which is one of the main reasons you want to do it. Also, you want to make sure the organization knows who you are and that they're going to be looking for your application. Grant writing is fundraising, and fundraising is building relationships. So make sure you call that administrator.
Awesome. Okay, so this should seem obvious. With most grants, they post questions for you to describe your program. So this is the writing portion of the grant. And I would say that as educators, you have probably given the same advice to your students many times. Just start the project. Just start writing, just start making, just start doing it. This part can be intimidating, especially when everything's sitting in front of you. You're looking at that long application and you're just like, bleh, I don't want to do this. But just grab your coffee, sit down and dig in. Don't worry about spelling, grammar, spit out content at this point. Get things down on the page. If you're stuck, move on to the next question. Trust me, it's better to put something down and come back, but don't stress out too much about each question. I have found that creating bullet points or a short outline, if you really can't think of the pretty words you want to write down, is super helpful. And then you can just come back to those outlines, and often your brain will be in a better place to kind of form those bullet points into cohesive content. It's really that simple. Just sit down and start writing.
Too true. Yeah, and I started this process just before we had Facebook and Twitter and social media, and you could be online all the time. It was a lot easier in those days.
Yeah.
Well, have a trusted friend or colleague edit your application. Like Megan just said, don't stress out too much about your grammar, but also never show a colleague your first draft because they'll be very concerned. So you get your first draft out, then you do another draft, and then you send it to your mom, a colleague, or a friend who can edit it for you. You're not going to see all of your mistakes because you've already read it too many times. Somebody looking at it for you and having another set of eyes on it is hugely important, because you don't want to distract a reviewer with simple mistakes, which we all make. And if you,
Sorry, guys.
yeah, no, that's okay.
I was trying to turn it off, and I forgot. I was
We all make errors.
making a mistake.
And they, when I'm reviewing an application and there are a lot of simple mistakes and typos, I question that applicant's ability to run their program. If you can't communicate to me in an edited way, I don't trust that you'll be able to, so people will start evaluating your application and your how you'll be effective in carrying out the program. So make sure somebody takes a look at that and cleans it up for you.
Absolutely. And point number 6 is very similar, but this is kind of when you've gotten the grant back from that colleague, you've read it again, you think you've gathered all the appropriate documents, the budget's put together, at least a loose budget, and you're like, okay, I think, if we had to turn this in today, we could do it. You know what, you need to find someone else to read that darn grant again. Maybe it's your executive director, maybe you have protocol in place for who's going to read that. Or maybe you ask your partner or your spouse to read it, because, they're going to have an outside perspective, and they're going to catch even probably more grammatical errors or spellings. They might say, hey, you kind of missed a portion of this question. I don't think you really answered it. And having that outside perspective can be really valuable. So at this point, you're just totally sick of this grant. So it's really nice to pass it off again. But it is really important that someone else takes a good look at it. As many people as, you have time to review it, that you trust, of course.
Right. Okay. Find support materials to support the project for which you are applying. So when I am reviewing a grant, I will look at all the support materials, because that's part of your application. And sometimes organizations, none of your schools, of course, nobody I know, throw in a lot of support materials, and in my mind they do this. Nobody's going to read them anyway, and they'll see we have so much support. Oh no, I'm gonna read them. For example, not naming any names, there was an application once I was reviewing that was for a continuation of a research project. And in the application, they talked about all these wonderful things that happened during the first phase of this project, and how the kids loved it, and we learned this and they learned that. And I read they included the research document from the researchers in their support materials. I'm sure a lot of you have read these things, and they're somewhat dry. There was an entire section of how everybody hated the project. The kids ultimately abandoned the whole thing, and the visiting artists had to complete. They were doing 1,000 cranes. And the visiting artists had to finish all the cranes because they had to get to this point of completion. And the report went on and on about the whole thing was basically a disaster. So, I noticed that the application and the support materials they weren't telling the same story. So make sure you're telling the same story. That's what your support materials are doing. They're enhancing. I had one application I was reviewing once that threw in support materials that were related to a different project. It was a good project, but it wasn't the project that for which they were applying for support. So without any kind of explanation about how this was fulfilling this, I felt like I've gone down this, I need to be over here, and you've sent me over here. What are you doing? With your letters of support, we all send our friends templates the day before the grant is due. Ask, please send me your letter of support. I get it. If you are going to send a pre-written letter to your friends at different organizations, make them all different. And make them all different. If they can't make them different, you make them different. Many times have read the exact same letter on letterhead, different letterheads with different people signing it. And that doesn't feel like support to me. I'd much rather have, here's an excerpt of an email we got from someone. Of course, it depends on what the guidelines are. Make sure you're following them, but make sure those letters are as sincere as possible. Make sure your images are clear. Make sure your budgets in the support material match your budget in the application, or include a clear explanation about why it doesn't. If you're a school and your fiscal year is September to August, and the granting organization has a fiscal year that's July to June, that's why the budget doesn't quite line up. Just include some explanations about that. Clarity is always key. With a grant application, particularly a state or a federal types of funding, you think of that poor bastard who's got to read all that, first of all, because we do. And clarity is key. Call the program coordinator. Is this support material seem appropriate? Don't try to just throw lots of things in like to confuse people, or, oh, this will be fine. There won't be an opportunity to ask for forgiveness later. So that's sort of my soapbox about support materials.
I appreciate your passion for support materials, Emily. So this one is not always easy to do, but we do encourage you to submit early if possible for some really good reasons. And I have been there so many times where I'm pressing that send button at 4:59 on a Wednesday afternoon, which is when all grants seem to be due, or at 11:59 p.m. But there are good reasons for doing so. If you are a few days ahead or a day ahead, you have time to sit down and look at it one last time. And you realize you were supposed to have 3 letters of support and you only have 2 letters of support. And so then you do call your friend Emily and say, oh my God, can you please help me out? Here's some bullet points. Here's a little bit about, our organization and the project. Write me a letter if you can. And Emily will say, of course, because she knows she's going to have you reciprocate that at some point. Or as in my case, I was writing a federal grant and I had it all ready to go in a Word document. And I was about to pop it in to the online application. Then I found out spaces counted as characters, which was a terrible thing to discover at the last minute, although it was in the instructions, of course, I found. And so then I had to go in and crop everything even more, which was a very, very painful process. And I only think I had like 3 hours to do it. So all those little kinds of things, it could be almost anything. And it really is valuable to submit early for that. This has happened to me also. Sometimes if you submit early, there might be someone on the other end who's kind of going through grant materials as they come in, and they may contact you and say, hey, you are missing this key thing. That has happened to me, and they're very forgiving of it. They want you to be successful. So you still have time to actually submit that piece that is missing. That has happened to me before for federal grants, and it's very helpful because there's no going back, right? Once you press send. Then also it just looks good, right? Like you look like you're on the ball. If you're going to actually get a grant in early, like, I mean, it's not required to get it in early by any means, but you feel better. You can take a breath, and it makes your organization look like, or your school or your program look like you have it together. I'm having trouble advancing the slides. There we go.
Keep your funders informed. This is what I'm talking about. This is relationships. So you call the program coordinator, you submit your application, you receive from funding, and then they never hear from you again. Maybe they don't have a final report requirement, so you think that you're fine. You're not fine. Your funders want to hear from you because they have organizations to which they need to report. Even state and federal grants, they want to hear from you. They want to know what's going on. You're building this relationship with your program coordinator. What I try to do is send a monthly update to funders. So I have a list of, these are people who have, and you can segment it. Like, these are my current funders, past funders, should be funders, potential funders, and you can do your updates. Sometimes the updates to everyone, sometimes the updates to a specific funder. You can segment your list, and it's really just, hey, we're here, we're doing stuff. This has become particularly important now because I first wanted to contact all my funders in March and say, we're effed. See, I stopped myself from swearing that time. We're effed. I'm so sorry. Do you want your money back? I don't know what we're doing. This is right after the state of emergency was called in Ohio. And everyone replied and said, oh God, no, keep it. Just keep it. Do what you need to do. Great. And then, so I was basically at that point doing almost weekly updates with the funders as things were changing. I'm like, okay, we have a virtual program now. This is what we're doing. This is what we need. And we ended up with funders saying, this is not always going to happen, and we're not always going to be in a pandemic. But okay, they were like, so great, that's awesome. How much more do you need? And I'm telling them how much more we need. Grant writing, again, like fundraising, relationship building, funders have to give their money away. Don't be coy. Don't be shy. Like, well, I need Zoom and I need to train people how to use it. And we're going to do Google Classrooms and we want to develop this program and we want to make sure this is going right. And I think I need this much. And it's going great because I've updated my funders. Like, I've kept them up to date. They know what we're doing. They know they can count on us, and we're available to them, and we're here to help, and we're making sure that they're fulfilling their mission as well. And thanks. Nobody can have too many thanks. Have your board thank them. You thank them. When you get a federal or a state grant, you're going to want to thank your legislators. You send letters out to, so you're constantly advocating appropriately. You're not a lobbyist, you're an advocate of what's happening with you, because those legislators want to know that their constituents understand their part they had in state and national funding.
Awesome. Why are you doing this? Okay. This is probably something that should have been one of the first slides in retrospect, but often this actually comes after you've submitted the grant. Sometimes we just don't think things through. So it's obviously important that everybody is on board for a grant. Your fiscal office at your school, any other teachers that may be involved, aides, the partner organizations, but you also want to make sure that you can actually implement the grant. You need to make sure you can physically do it. You have the time, you have the energy, you have the resources. I was in a situation once where I was the educator for an organization, not so much the grant writer. We had a role for that, which is like a miracle that was a separate role. And a grant was written for field trip support for local schools to visit the place where I worked. This grant was awarded. Then I was sat down, we got this grant, Megan, you need to get 3,000 kids through the year in 1 month. I'm like, okay, that's not possible. It's about I don't think I can do that and, plan that in one month here. And then this was actually occurring at the same time when I was supposed to be planning this huge community festival and implementing almost everything that was going to go into place for that. So there was no way I could also run a bunch of kids through our galleries and plan this huge festival. So I had to have a tough conversation with our director, and we had to hire lots of interns basically to get us through that time. You really want to make sure that you're talking to everybody who's going to help you implement this grant, asking people to volunteer for things before you submit that, and then that grant is approved. So you don't get into those sticky situations, and so that you can be effective in the product that you produce. Make sure everybody's on board and they're ready to do their assigned role. It's just a tip, and often because we are working up against deadlines or someone asks us to write a grant we weren't expecting to write, we don't always think about who's going to do what in reality. Maybe in principle we have an idea in our head, but it's just something to think through. Good reminder. All right, got some pro tips for you too. I hope you're ready. Emily's going to kick us off.
All right. My pro tip number 1, as you can see here, is read. And then read some more. When you're not writing, you're reading. Read fiction, manuals, comic books, fundraising, art blogs. Try to get in at least something every day, which is going to help with your writing. And I support and check out this link, Ethical Storytelling, and take the Ethical Storytelling Pledge. This becomes important for us down in Southern Ohio, Southeastern Ohio, where there is an Appalachian narrative that is not always true, which is the Washington Post articles, the New York Times articles. They show a picture of a kid, a dirty little kid hanging out of a window. It was a photograph by Matt Ulrich, which was taken in 2011, and which is very often used, which tells a part of the story, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So we want to be sure that we're not getting into poverty porn language, and that we're not selling something and playing up an idea that is incorrect in the hopes that we'll receive more funding. So check out Ethical Storytelling, and no data without a story, and no story without data. You want to be able to back up the things you're saying. You want to make sure that they're true. So you've got the data, but then you need to tell the story, and which Patty is amazing at. So you just saw like 2 really wonderful examples, and in Sharee's presentation as well. With a grant, you might have a bit more numbers, people affected, whatever you're measuring. I've got some thoughts about measurement collection, but that's not in this presentation. But data and story are important, and they all fall in line with a good grant is a good story.
That segues really good into our next point, that remember that there is a human being reading and reviewing your grant application. So write something that you would enjoy reading, something that they would enjoy reading, that's something that Emily would enjoy reading, as she often reviews grants. Just that's really all I have to say about that. Emily, you've got the boilerplate one.
Yeah, okay, so what I do when I have a new program or at the beginning of grant season, there are 2 grant seasons. There's a fall and a spring, and then there are things that pop up. I write boilerplate, so it's basic answers to questions. We use Google Drive here, so it's a Google document, and I have our mission, our goals, our general things that you're going to be asked, program descriptions, who's your community, who's affected, what's your census data, what's our participation data, have we done a survey, is it all here in this document? So when something comes up, I just cut and paste, and I adjust it when you don't have time. So you're not spending the time redoing your work constantly. So just have your boilerplate ready.
Awesome. This kind of goes back to that assigning roles piece that we were kind of discussing, but if there are people who work within your school system that need to provide things for you. Like, again, your fiscal office maybe needs to help you with your budget. Perhaps there's someone who does social media, or you have a photographer that you need to gather media from. You need to give them plenty of time to prepare those things for you for the grant. They probably are used to being asked to do things last minute, but it's just as a courtesy, so that they can get the best material to you. You have time to review it and send it back if there are things that are missing. It's a respect thing, and it also is going to just make your grant that much stronger if there is time to go over everything that they send to you, take time to choose the best images, make sure that the budget is nice and tight, things like that. I added one also, Emily, copy and paste. This is something that's happened recently. If you are applying for a grant that has an online portal, make sure that you write everything in a Google Doc or a Word document, and then you copy and paste it at the very last minute before you submit that grant. Because more than once in my experience, and I'm sure your experience too, Emily, you have put everything into that grant, saved it as a draft, and then when you open that grant back up, somehow everything is missing. Sometimes this happens because technology. Sometimes this happens because another person working on your grant has logged in, and you're both working on it at the same time. Somehow it erases everything that you've done. That is devastating when it happens. So just copying everything into that Word document. It's easier to share anyway and stuff like that. And then when you're ready, go ahead and paste it in to that online application. And our last tip, you're the experts.
This is, you know your program, trust yourself, you know what you're doing, you know, and you can probably explain it. It all boils down to, you know, dealing with people as human people, even an online portal, that think about that there's a human person on the other end. You can do this. Mm-hmm. And you're going to write something, and if you can, and we didn't include some pro tips, but a great pro tip is if there's a public review of your application, go to it, and that's when you're going to learn how to write a grant. The first grant I ever submitted, I went to the review, and they tore it apart. They were right. It was horrifying. It was like being in Sister Laura's first grade class again. Like, it was the most awful thing that ever happened to me. And I made a vow that that was never going to happen again. So listen to people reviewing your grant.
Excellent. Or you can even call and ask for feedback too. That is A-okay to do. It's A-okay. Yep. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, but it's not going to stack against you in any way. All right, Emily, I'm going to kind of let you take this part over, and I'll jump in if I can.
Okay, so for the last couple of minutes, we thought we could chat about the current trends. The current trend is nobody knows. So you're going to have to get comfortable in we don't know. Be wary of broad statements like people aren't giving right now. Foundations are doing X, Y, Z. Well, there's not going to be any money. The federal grants are going to dry up. Oh, the state grants are on hold. Everything is changing, and it's changing quicker than we've ever been used to. So that change right now is the trend. So you need to be prepared, but you also need to be flexible, and you need to be listening. And I know that in schools, this can be extraordinarily difficult, particularly what we're going through now. If you think you have a program that might be happening and you think you found a good funding opportunity for that program, move forward and work closely with that program coordinator, and as well as keeping your school informed. If they want to fund the program, it's highly probable that they're going to be flexible with their funding. That is a new trend, and it's kind of exciting. I have some in-school, you know, I got some grants for some in-school programming that we had planned on doing in the fall. It doesn't look like that's going to happen right now. I contacted the funder, I've contacted the schools, we're planning for spring, we're holding our breath, we're hoping, but that funding is going to stay there and move with the program because it's the program that they've supported. So I think I'm advocating for calmness as the current trend. And I'm advocating for you to stay away and be leery of people making statements without without checking, about whether or not that's true, because giving is down, but it's down anecdotally because people aren't asking. So think about asking, call your program coordinators, and of course, working with our great Ohio Arts Council has always been one of the great delights. And I don't know if you can hear the siren going off, but it goes off at noon at Nelsonville every day. So that's how I know what time it is. So nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. And the Ohio Arts Council has really been a model organization in keeping funding flexible as much as they can for a state arts organization. And we're very fortunate to have them in our state. So make sure you're in contact with the Arts Council.
Absolutely. And I would even say that we have reached out to, we get a major grant from Ohio Department of Education, which has a lot of offerings. And we were, despite the fact that we don't know what school's really going to look like this year, and it's for an arts integration program, we were mostly funded for the same grant that we usually are, taking into account that we help to be very flexible with the programming that we're going to provide, and what our data looks like at the end will be very different from what it's looked like in previous years. So again, I just want to encourage what Emily said. Don't be afraid to apply. Don't be afraid to call your funders and talk about it with them. And don't be cautious because you think that money's not there, because it is very possible that you will be funded if they can do so. They want to give you the money. They do. So here we say thank you for your time. Here's our contact information. If you want to reach out to us, you could probably also find the same information on both of our organizations' websites. Emily, do you have anything else to add?
I'm looking at the chat. Okay, yes, true. Yes, they do a public review for Teach Arts Ohio. And we're going to be around for the Q&A. And I'm going to pop out for like 5 minutes. So if anyone has a grant question, save it for another 10 minutes. But please feel free to contact me, to contact Megan, and we're happy to help.
Mm-hmm. And we want to work with you too, also.
Thank you both so much. Emily, thanks for highlighting that part about the public review. I think, I know as a young grant writer, just as you had your first experience, sitting through other reviews is just, it's so informative. And then of course, so you can do that from the comfort of your home, just like here, it's all of them are live streamed with the Arts Council, and you learn tips and resources to make your grants better through that process. And then, of course, the next step is serving as the panelist. And when you read 30 or 40 grants, you really, of course, get tips there too. So thank you both very much. With that, we are definitely at the point where we will take answers or questions and have them answered. We've been joined by all of the rest of the presenters as well that were in the pre-recorded presentations. So I see Jennifer Davis, and I know Shelby Harris is here. So I should look at the chat. All great things. Okay, so I open it. Unmute your mic. Please, questions, conversations. Someone has to be first.
You want to make me go first? I did the Artist in Schools presentation about bringing the artist residencies. I'm here if you have any questions about that. I just want to keep people encouraged to, welcome artists into maybe their curriculum or how they're teaching things from home, because these artists are prepared to work with you and record themselves and have things customized for your students. So there's still an opportunity where they can work with you. And I just want to keep you encouraged to try to find some artists maybe that could help you share and teach your curriculum. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Shelby, I have a question.
Okay.
I heard someone,
Go ahead, Cindy.
go ahead, I'll wait. All right, well, my question for Shelby was about her programs. I see Teach Arts Ohio, and I saw the other programs, but I guess my one question would be about applications. How do we do that? Do we just email you, call you? Is there a deadline? Is it ongoing? What would that process look like?
Okay, so in the slide, slide presentation, it talks about oaae.net/artists. That's our personal artist directory for Ohio Alliance, and you can request any artist through that website. And the artist request goes through to me and to the artist, so it gets the conversation going as soon as you request the artist. And that's for that roster. And then the Teaching Arts Ohio, Jared, what would you say would be the best way to go about those artists?
Sure. So the other resource there is the Ohio Teaching Artist roster, which is just in its second year. It's a big partnership between Art Possible Ohio, Ohio Dance, the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education, and the Ohio Arts Council. So we have a year ago taken application, reviewed, and vetted about 44 teaching artists that are highly skilled in arts integration, understand curriculum, and all of those things. So those are some of the primary artists doing the Teach Arts Ohio residencies and things. But that roster is housed right now on the Ohio Arts Council site. And if you make inquiry, essentially there are a couple questions that you're asked, if there's a particular agency you want to work with. So if, example, you really want to work with Ohio Dance and a teaching artist, who's a dancer, that sort of thing. It filters to the right one of us to field that and help set that up. That roster will just in the coming month or two have some new additions to it as well. So stay tuned for that.
Does that answer that question, Miss Cindy?
Yes, thank you so much.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Okay, so online we have, so if I wanted to start a program that involved budding community involving elderly, school kids, and public members, where should I begin? Where would I begin looking? Patty, Sharee?
So there,
Oh, go ahead, Patty.
so it sounds like a community, like to build a community integrated studio. The person.
Or do they just mean to do like a residency?
Just as a program that involved building community.
It's me. Okay, yeah, so, I have this idea to start like a community space. But then with elderly and this and that, I'm sure that we would have to go to retirement communities and this and that. But then have maybe the artwork from the kids worked in with that. I'm just thinking after Patty was talking about the circles and then maybe implementing the kids' artwork onto the fabric or whatever form that takes, and just getting things like that out into the community. So it would be like different workshops, but a lot of people involved, just to get the arts out there.
I have one quick suggestion, and then Patty, you probably have more to say, but an easy way to start that process, I think, would be to approach the nursing home. Most nursing homes have some sort of activities for their residents, and a lot of times they have an actual activity center. So you could either, well, right now you couldn't bring children in there, but in the future, hopefully you can bring children in there. But you could certainly bring the children's artwork in that way. So it would give you a foot in the door without having to commit to having a separate building and space and rent and all that. It would be an easy way to just try it out, I guess. And then
Okay.
Patty probably has lots of other suggestions.
All right.
Well, that's exactly why I was attracted to the sheltered workshop environments, because I couldn't even imagine, at 24 years old, figuring out how to get a building and an administrative staff, and the systems were already there, and I always considered myself a barnacle on the boat, and then figuring out what that organization needed and becoming relevant to them. And so like with employment and engagement and community integration, that was what was important to the sheltered workshop. And I think it's true for almost any organization. There are elements of that. And so, to do projects that you can bring into the extended care facility, and people can be stitching, or, you find out what that facility wants, and then what people can do and what they're interested in. And you can definitely round robin projects. To have a group of people bead or tie or cut, you can have them cut circles, you can have them do all kinds of things, and then bring those things to the women's shelter where they could do more fine work. And then, it could, so that you have these layers of community, but then they're all connected, even if we have to be distant right now. But it's, and then once you get into those spaces, you can learn so much about what a program desires. And it could be that they desire awareness within their community. And it's like, okay, then we'll take this artwork and we'll hang it, we'll do a guerrilla show and hang it, uptown, and just get some, so you learn by doing, but it doesn't have to be big to start. You can start with just a few people and then have it expand and see where it organically goes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Perfect. From the chat, the next question is to Jennifer and Vicky. It says, when your artist residencies had to stop due to the COVID closure, it looks like you called the Ohio Arts Council. How were you able to continue? Did the OAC liaison, which of course would be Jared Small or Chiquita Mullins-Lee, help you? And did you have to think of something new?
So yes, I was going to share, mirroring what Shelby had said, that yes, the Ohio Arts Council, Teach Arts Ohio, other organizations are very willing to make this work in the style of teaching that we find ourselves in, whether it be blended, whether it be in classroom, whether it be all virtual. And I was in the midst of a Teach Arts Ohio grant and artist residency last year, not with Vicky. It was actually happening with Zoot Theater Company out of Dayton and Mad River Theater Works here in Logan County. And yes, once the school closed, I did reach out to Jared Small at the Ohio Arts Council, and he was so willing to work with us to allow the residency to continue and still produce quality teaching for our students. And so what we ended up doing, Tristan, of course, was back in Dayton at his studio, and we had another colleague of his jump on board, and that particular colleague, Thomas, was really talented at videography and filming. So they created teaching videos, and instead of the puppet residency that we were doing in-house and creating these very large scale puppets for our production, the students transitioned to shadow boxes and shadow puppets. So it was quite doable. It fit all the criteria that we were trying to hit with our stream center and activities there. And yeah, it continued and worked out very, very well. And I'll let Vicky share her thoughts and ideas for, as an artist, as a teaching artist, how she could continue programming that way as well.
Thanks, Jennifer. For me, it worked out well as far as I had just finished out of school, like a week before they closed the schools. So it worked out for me in that regard. I had 2 other residencies that were coming up. So we are just trying to navigate that later. But for me, I would be able to record in my art studio and teach from there. I could talk about the materials, the stained glass and ceramic tile, and show tools and how you use the different tools, and show murals that I've worked on and things like that. So I can teach from my studio. And then it could be that if the students are working from home, that they could collect things in their yard, like nature items, or things around the house, little pieces of jewelry, or even maybe broken tile from a family project where they've redone, the kitchen tile or bathroom tile, or just, things in drawers, and ask parents, can I use this? Or maybe kids have their own kinds of keepsakes in the room that they would want to use, small things that could be used in mosaics. So the students could work from home still, and I could teach from my studio.
Perfect. And I see in the chat, Shelby has an example or a comment she'd like to make. Shelby?
I'm here.
Oh.
I was just gonna say one thing was, when it comes to collaboration and trying to get everyone to kind of do something, it was maybe 2 questions ago. I know we had a lot of success with our art kits, and I think that there's a component that we're gonna try with next time, where we can do a collaborative with seniors. I know with, I work with a organization here called All People Arts, and we're doing with seniors, we're giving them all art kits and canvases that they will work on, and then they'll turn them into their living facility then we will put the collaboration together in the same way with the kids. So that was an earlier example that I was piggybacking on, to the fact that, you could do a distribution somehow to get those participants in that senior center, and then you could do a collaborative, and then you could put it all together. So to that was that. And then to add to the comments about the artists, our Art in the House artists, we have 5 master teaching artists who are creating lessons that you can work with your students from. They can use the materials that Queen Brooks and DeWart Brown have told them that they can use in their homes. And these are ongoing lessons that our teachers are working on to help be a resource to you all, to help kids to have the arts at home. And I know that our teaching artists, our artists who do like dance and, for example, West African drum, they are buying equipment and learning to record lessons to cater to your classroom and things like that. So those are my examples.
Very good. Any other questions? Driving grant questions? Okay, if not, I'm going to share some more information, but if you think of anything else, pop back up and I'll happily quit talking. I'm just going to share, and of course, I'm all the way at the end again. So with the Ohio Alliance for Arts, again, thank you everyone for your participation, and all of our hosts and presenters. It has been just a knowledge-filled and really inspiring day. I know we all sit on Zoom for so long, and sometimes it's so tedious, but I think today has just not felt that way at all. I've enjoyed all the presentations. I've learned. We've had some lighthearted, good times through it. I just want to make sure, first and foremost, that you check out all of the things the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education has to offer, all of which are listed on our website. But we have been convening a lot of workshops like this. So, for example, even today, this is the 3rd week of the Creative Conversations for Arts Education. And so what those are, it's a series of calls each and every day that are discipline specific. So we have a call for dance education, drama theater education, music education, which now is actually split into 2. So general music, visual art, and then an ensemble music. So those are running concurrently, but check that out. They're led by Raymond Mueller from the Department of Education, who's the new fine arts consultant. Myself and Justin Cathmal are board chair at the Alliance, as well as joined by the presidents or directors of all of those other professional organizations. The next of those actually is on August 19th. And there'll be plenary sessions all day, but it's an adaptation inclusivity in arts education. So we have a great presenter from Connecticut that will be leading all of those sessions. So check those out. As well, we're planning a session on the 20th on blended learning. So if you are signed up for all of our communications, you've probably seen that, or you'll see that again. And our programming committee has a couple other things in the works there. A couple other important resources for you to think about or to know that exist on the Alliance website. We have our information coordinator, Joan Platts, has analyzed and provided a really useful guide for the Reset Restart for those of you that are going back into classrooms. We worked with all the professional organizations in Ohio to put together Ohio's recommendations for safe restart practices in arts education. So those are all the social distancing and all the resources, consulting with the Center for Disease Controls and the Ohio Department of Health. So some really some quick information, but also all the links you need to dig into the respective documents in each discipline to gather that information. We know now is an important time, is an important time, if not more than any, to continue being advocates for programs in your schools, in your communities. So in particular, there's a really resourceful document there on the law and rule of arts education. So as you may or may not be faced with situations in your communities where arts programs are being marginalized or cut, the resources are there to help you understand your case for support if you need to advocate to your school boards or administrators or all of those things. So that and many, many more things are there. So do check that out. We also, through the school year, produce our weekly Arts Online newsletter that has all of those resources as they are generated, and we need to share them. So if you've signed up for that, you'll keep getting that. It'll be back around at the start of September. So that's really good. Finally, there is a link which I might have gone past already. There it is at the bottom. Survey. It'll also come to you again through Eventbrite. But if you fill out the survey and get to the end, there's a final question where you can enter information to have a certificate of participation generated today. So you can count it as professional development time, of course. And we'll mail that along with this fantastic Arts Ally sticker that was created by Gabrielle Deacon. Her mother was in Patty's presentation and a former member of the Alliance board. But all of those things will come your way. So with that, I will be quiet, but Cindy, the program committee co-chair, really has done so much work. And Cindy, I'll give you a final opportunity, Cindy Kerr, if you'd like to wrap up today. Or maybe Cindy's not with us. Well, with that, if there are no other questions, do I hear any? Then I'll thank you for your participation today. And we hope to do more summits like this and that you'll keep joining us. And everyone have a great afternoon.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.